It's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress downregulate genes and create disease, long-term effects. Human beings, because of the size of the neocortex, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. We can think about our problems and turn on those chemicals. That means then our thoughts could make us sick. So if it's possible that our thoughts could make us sick, is it possible then our thoughts could make us well? The answer is absolutely yes.
Hey everybody, welcome to Impact Theory. Our goal with this show and company is to introduce you to the people and ideas that will help you actually execute on your dreams. All right, today's guest is a New York Times best-selling author and one of the most sought-after speakers in the world. He's lectured and given advanced workshops in more than 30 countries across 5 continents, all with the aim of helping people better understand and unlock the power of their mind. His expertise is the intersection of the fields of neuroscience, epigenetics, and quantum physics, and he's partnered with other scientists across multiple disciplines to perform extensive research on the effects of meditation, using advanced technologies such as epigenetic testing, brain mapping with EEGs, and gas discharge visualization technology. Through his work, he is endeavoring to help advance both the scientific community and the public at large's understanding of mind-derived health optimization, a topic he covered extensively in his groundbreaking book, You Are the Placebo. His teaching has had such a profound impact on the way that people perceive a wide range of brain-related topics around mindfulness and well-being that he's a faculty member at the Quantum University in Hawaii, the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies in New York, and the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. He's also an invited chair of the research committee at Life University in Atlanta, as well as a corporate consultant where he delivers his lectures and workshops for businesses. So please, help me in welcoming the man who has appeared in such films as Heal, People vs. the State of Illusion, and Unleashing Creativity, the author of the recent book, Becoming Supernatural, Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So diving into your world and how you perceive the sense of self and the way that you marry science to the way that we form memories, the way that we live in a perpetual state of reliving our past and things like that, it's really, really incredible. And I want to dive into the whole notion of you sort of being a habitual construct. Like what is that? What is the habit of you?
Well, a habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times that your body now knows how to do it better than your mind. So if you think about it, people wake up in the morning, they begin to think about their problems. Those problems are circuits of memories in the brain. Each one of those memories are connected to people and things at certain times and places. And if the brain is a record of the past, the moment they start their day, they're already thinking in the past. Each one of those memories has an emotion. Emotions are the end product of past experiences. So the moment they recall those memories of their problems, they all of a sudden feel unhappy, they feel sad, they feel pain. Now, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So the person's entire state of being when they start their day is in the past. So what does that mean? The familiar past will sooner or later be predictable future. So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, by very definition of emotions, you're thinking in the past. And for the most part, you're going to keep creating the same life. So then people grab their cell phone, they check their WhatsApp, they check their text, they check their emails, they check Facebook, they take a picture of their feet, they post it on Facebook, they tweet something, they do Instagram, they check the news, and now they feel really connected to everything that's known in their life. And then they go through a series of routine behaviors. They get out of bed on the same side, they go to the toilet, they get a cup of coffee, they take a shower, they get dressed, they drive to work the same way, they do the same things, they see the same people, they push the same emotional buttons, and that becomes the routine, and it becomes like a program. So now they've lost their free will to a program, and there's no unseen hand doing it to them. So when it comes time to change, the redundancy of that cycle becomes a subconscious program. So now 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a computer program. So then a person can say with their 5% of their conscious mind, I want to be healthy, I want to be happy, I want to be free. But the body's on a whole different program. So then how do you begin to make those changes? Well, you have to get beyond the analytical mind, because what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And that's where meditation comes in, because you can teach people through practice how to change their brainwaves, slow them down. And when they do that properly, they do enter the operating system where they can begin to make some really important changes. So most people then wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis. You know, they wait for loss, some tragedy to make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? And you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. And I think right now, the cool thing is that people are waking up.
That's really interesting, and where I found the deepest hooks into how powerful this can be for somebody is when you talk about trauma, and you've talked about how people experience a traumatic event, but they then basically rehearse it, and how that then has this knock-on effect. So what is that? Why do people find it so hard to get past trauma?
Well, the stronger the emotional reaction you have to some experience in your life, the higher the emotional quotient, the more you pay attention to the cause. And the moment the brain puts all of its attention on the cause, it takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. So long-term memories are created from very highly emotional experiences. So what happens then is that people think neurologically within the circuitry of that experience, and they feel chemically within the boundaries of those emotions. And so when you have an emotional reaction to someone or something, most people think that they can't control their emotional reaction. Well, it turns out if you allow that emotional reaction, it's called a refractory period, to last for hours or days, that's called a mood. I say to someone, hey, well, what's up? They say, I'm in a mood. Well, why are you in a mood? Well, I had this thing happen to me 5 days ago, and I'm having one long emotional reaction. If you keep that same emotional reaction going on for weeks or months, that's called temperament. Why is he so bitter? I don't know, let's ask him. Why is he so bitter? Why are you bitter? Well, I had this thing happen to me 9 months ago. And if you keep that same emotional reaction going on for years on end, that's called a personality trait. And so learning how to shorten the refractory period of emotional reactions is really where the work starts. So then people, when they have an event, what they do is they keep recalling the event, because the emotions of stress hormones, the survival emotions, are saying pay attention to what happened, because you want to be prepared if it happens again. Turns out most people spend 70% of their life living in survival and living in stress, so they're always anticipating the worst case scenario based on a past experience, and they're literally, out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, they're selecting the worst possible outcome, and they're beginning to emotionally embrace it with fear, and they're conditioning their body into a state of fear. Do that enough times, the body has a panic attack without you. You can't even predict it because it's programmed subconsciously. So then you say to the person, why are you this way? And they'll say, I am this way because of this event that happened to me 15 or 20 years ago. And what that means from a biological standpoint is that they haven't been able to change since that event. So then the emotions from the experience tend to give the body and the brain a rush of energy. So people become addicted to the rush of those emotions, and they use the problems and conditions in their life to reaffirm their limitation, so at least they can feel something. So now when it comes time to change, you say to the person, why are you this way? Well, every time they recall the event, they're producing the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event is occurring, firing and wiring the same circuits and sending the same emotional signature to the body. Well, what's the relevance behind that? Well, your body is the unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between the experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. So the body's believing it's living in the same past experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And so then when those emotions influence certain thoughts, and they do, and then those thoughts create the same emotions, and those same emotions influence the same thoughts, Now the entire person's state of being is in the past. So then the hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before, period. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, get ready, because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty.
Why does it feel so uncomfortable? Is it because of the neurons that fire together wire together, so there's like an easiness to that loop, just because literally, and you've talked very eloquently about this, the way that the neurons connect in the brain, how rapidly, I've seen you show footage of how rapidly those connections happen, which is pretty incredible. Is that what makes it so discomforting for people?
I think that the bigger thing is that we keep firing and wiring those circuits. They become more hardwired. So you have a thought and then the program runs. But it's the emotion that follows the thought. If you have a fearful thought, you're going to feel anxiety. The moment you feel anxiety, your brain's checking in with your body and saying, yeah, you're pretty anxious. So then you start thinking more corresponding thoughts equal to how you feel. Well, the redundancy of that cycle conditions the body to become the mind. So now, when it comes time to change, the person steps into that river of change and they make a different choice, and all of a sudden, they don't feel the same way. So the body says, well, you've been doing this for 35 years. You're going to just stop suffering and stop feeling guilty and stop feeling shameful, and you're not going to complain or blame or make excuses or feel sorry for yourself. Well, the body's in the unknown. So the body says, I want to return back to familiar territory. So the body starts influencing the mind, and it says, start tomorrow. You're too much like your mother. You'll never change. This isn't going to work for you. This doesn't feel right. And so if you respond to that thought as if it's true, that same thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, which will create the same experience, which will produce the same emotion.
I want to talk about that notion of, give me a little more detail on what you mean by the body becomes the mind or the unconscious mind. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, those are two different things. Your body is your unconscious mind. In a sense, if you're sitting down and you start thinking about some future worst-case scenario that you're conjuring up in your mind, and you begin to feel the emotion of that event, your body doesn't know the difference between the event that's taking place in your world, outer world, and what you're creating by emotion or thought alone. So most people then, they're constantly reaffirming their emotional states. So when it comes time to give up that emotion, they can say, I really want to do it, but really the body is stronger than the mind because it's been conditioned that way. So the servant now has become the master. And the person, all of a sudden, once they step into that unknown, they'd rather feel guilt and suffering because at least they can predict it. Being in the unknown is a scary place for most people because the unknown is uncertain. People say to me, well, I can't predict my future. I'm in the unknown, and I always say the best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day? The act of rehearsing them mentally, closing your eyes, and rehearsing the action.
Rehearsing the reaction of what you want, or the action?
Yeah, the action of what you want. By closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing some action. If you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between what you're imaging and what you're experiencing in 3D world. So then you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like the event has already occurred. Now, your brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, priming it that way, the hardware becomes a software program, and who knows, you just may start acting like a happy person. And then I think the hardest part is to teach our body emotionally what the future will feel like ahead of the actual experience. So what does that mean? You can't wait for your success to feel empowered. You can't wait for your wealth to feel abundant. You can't wait for your new relationship to feel love, or your healing to feel whole. I mean, that's the old model of reality of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. And when we feel better inside of us, we pay attention to whoever or whatever caused it. But what that means then is that from the Newtonian world is that most people spend their whole life living in lack, waiting for something to change out there.
What do you mean the Newtonian world?
The Newtonian world is all about the predictable. It's all about predicting a future. But the quantum model of reality is about cause and effect. The moment you start feeling abundant and worthy, you are generating wealth. The moment you're empowered and feel it, you're beginning to step towards your success. The moment you start feeling whole, your healing begins. And when you love yourself and you love all of life, you'll create an equal. And now you're causing an effect. And I think that's the difference between living as a victim in your world, saying, I am this way because of this person or that thing or this experience. They made me think and feel this way. When you switch that around, you become a creator of your world, and you start saying, my thinking and my feeling is changing an outcome in my life, and now that's a whole different game, and we start believing more that we're creators of reality.
So how do we go from, okay, I have this negative emotion, it's controlling my life, it's got me in this cycle of, I think about this emotion, which triggers a chemical reaction, which trains my body to feel that way, which makes it easier and more likely I will do it again. And so now I'm in this vicious cycle.
And unconscious, and it's unconscious.
Right. And you said, does your thinking create your environment, or does your environment create your thinking, which I thought was really, really interesting. So how do we then go from that, like mechanistically, to begin this visualization process of something that's empowering? It's me in a different state, it's my future self. Is it meditation? What does that look like?
If you're not being defined by a vision of the future, then you're left with the old memories of the past, and you will be predictable in your life. And if you wake up in the morning and you're not being defined by a vision of the future, as you see the same people and you go to the same places and you do the exact same thing at the exact same time, it's no longer that your personality is creating your personal reality. Now your personal reality is affecting or creating your personality. Your environment is really controlling how you think and feel unconsciously. Because every person, everything, every place, every experience has a neurological network in your brain. Every experience that you have with every person produces an emotion. So some people will use their boss to reaffirm their addiction to judgment. They'll use their enemy to reaffirm their addiction to hatred. They use their friends to reaffirm their addiction to suffering. So now, they need the outer world to feel something. So, to change them is to be greater than your environment, to be greater than the conditions in your world, and the environment is that seductive. So then, why is meditation the tool? Well, let's sit down, let's close our eyes. Let's disconnect from your outer environment. So if you're seeing less things, there's less stimulation going to your brain. If you're playing soft music or you have earplugs in, less sensory information coming to your brain, so you're disconnecting from your environment. If you can sit your body down and tell it to stay like an animal, stay right here. I'm going to feed you when we're done. You can get up and check your emails, you can do all your texts, but right now, you're going to sit there and obey me. So then, when you do that properly, and you're not eating anything or smelling anything or tasting anything, you're not up experiencing and feeling anything, you would have to agree with me that you're being defined by a thought, right? So when the body wants to go back to its emotional past, you become aware that your attention is on that emotion, and where you place your attention is where you place your energy. You're siphoning your energy out of the present moment into the past, and you become aware of that. And you settle your body back down in the present moment, because it's saying, well, it's 8 o'clock. You normally get upset because you're in traffic around this time. And here you are sitting, and we're used to feeling anger, and you're off schedule. Oh, it's 11 o'clock, and you usually check your emails and judge everybody. Well, the body's looking for that predictable chemical state. Every time you become aware that you're doing that, and your body is craving those emotions, and you settle it back down into the present moment, you're telling the body, it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind, and now your will is getting greater than the program. And if you keep doing this over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, just like training a stallion or a dog, it's just going to say, I'm going to sit. And the moment that happens, and the body's no longer the mind, when it finally surrenders, there's a liberation of energy. We go from particle to wave, from matter to energy. And we free ourselves from the chains of those emotions that keep us in the familiar past. And we've seen this thousands of times. In fact, we can actually predict it now on a brain scan.
Yeah, I found that so interesting. Let's go a little bit harder on metacognition, the notion that you don't have to believe everything you think. I love the way that you talk about that.
Yeah, we have a huge frontal lobe, and it's 40% of our entire brain. And most people, when they have a thought, they just think that that's the truth. And I think one of my greatest realizations in my own journey was just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So if you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and we do, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before, and you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, your life's not going to change very much, because the same thought leads to the same choice leads to the same behavior creates the same experience, and the same experience produces the same emotion. And so then the act of becoming conscious of this process to begin to become more aware of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. It's called metacognition. And so then, why is that important? Because the more conscious you become of those unconscious states of mind and body, the less likely you're going to go unconscious during the day. And that thought is not going to slip by your awareness unchecked, because it means to know thyself. The word meditation means to become familiar with. So as you become familiar with the thoughts, the behaviors, and the emotions of the old self, you're retiring that old self. As you fire and wire new thoughts and condition the body into a new emotional state, if you do that enough times, it'll begin to become familiar to you. So it's so important, just like a garden. If you're planting a garden, you got to get rid of the weeds. You got to take the plants from the past year and you got to pull them out. The rocks that sift to the top that are like our emotional blocks, they have to be removed. The soil has to be tenderized and broken down. We have to make room to plant a new garden. So primarily, we learn the most about ourselves and others when we're uncomfortable. Because the moment you move into that uncomfortable state, normally a program jumps in. When that program jumps in, it's because the person doesn't want to be in the present moment and engage it consciously. So when you teach people how to do that with a meditative process, turns out that when they're in their life, they're less likely to emotionally react. They're less likely to be so rigid and believe the thoughts they were thinking. They're more aware of when they go unconscious back into a habit, and that is what starts the process of change. And so we have to unlearn before we relearn. We have to break the habit of the old self before we reinvent a new self. We have to prune synaptic connections and sprout new connections. We have to unfire and unwire and refire and rewire. We have to unmemorize emotions that are stored in the body, then recondition the body to a new mind and to a new emotion, like deprogram and reprogram. That's the act, and it's a two-step process.
Yeah, I like the way that you call that out as an action. There was another thing that you said that I thought was really powerful about how insights themselves are essentially inert. They don't do anything. What then do we do with an insight? How do we take a breakthrough moment and make sure that it's not just a breakthrough moment? Like, I guarantee people watching right now are having like 100 aha moments. For sure, that was definitely the case for me as I was researching you. And when you said that, I was like, and that's the danger, that you have the aha and then nothing.
Yeah, and it is a danger, because then people will shrink back into mediocrity, and they'll use the insight to excuse them from taking a leap. They'll say, yeah, you know, I have a chemical imbalance in my brain. Yeah, my father was really overbearing. He was a perfectionist. That's why I am the way I am. You know, people, they come up with stuff to excuse themselves. The insight is actually giving them permission to stay limited. And it's an amazing idea, because they'll say to you that they really want to get over their anxiety. But let's take your ex-husband, let's put him in a straitjacket, let's duct tape him and shoot him to the moon. Now what? I mean, what are you going to do now? You still have to make those changes. And so then the person's enemy dies, or something shifts in their life, and that person's gone, they'll find another person to hate. This is just how we function as human beings. We just slide another reason to feel those emotions. So I think when people start to understand this, you know, I think knowledge is power, but knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment.
So how much of this is really learning to just bifurcate the world into, there's negative emotions that have negative neurochemistry associated with, and you said that in those states, if you're living in a perpetual state of stress hormones and things like that, illness is like a step away. And then just the other side of that is understanding that there's this whole other side of positive energy, which happiness, joy, empowerment, whatever that, you know, neurochemical cocktail is, but that when you're on that side, your immune system is more likely to function well. Like, is that just sort of bringing it down to like a really base level, is that sort of one of the big pieces?
Well, let's talk about it in terms of survival or creation. As I said, 70% of the time, people live in stress, and living in stress is living in survival. Now, all organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. You know, a deer gets chased by a pack of coyotes. When it outruns the coyotes, it goes back to grazing and the event is over. And the definition of stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of balance, out of homeostasis. The stress response is what the body innately does to return itself back to order. So you're driving down the road, someone cuts you off, you jam on the brakes, you may give them the finger, and then you settle back down and the event is over and boom, now everything's back to normal. But what if it's not a predator that's waiting for you outside the cave, but what if it's your coworker sitting right next to you, and all day long you're turning on those chemicals because they're pushing all your emotional buttons. When you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for disease, because no organism in nature can live in emergency mode for that extended period of time. It's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress downregulate genes and create disease, long-term effects. Human beings, because of the size of the neocortex, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. Think about our problems and turn on those chemicals. That means then our thoughts could make us sick. So if it's possible that our thoughts could make us sick, is it possible then our thoughts could make us well? The answer is absolutely yes. So then, what are the emotions that are connected to survival? Let's name it. Anger, aggression, hostility, hatred, competition, fear, anxiety, worry, pain, suffering, guilt, shame, unworthiness, envy, jealousy. Those are all created by the hormones of stress. And psychology calls them normal human states of consciousness. I call those altered states of consciousness. So then we tend to remember those traumatic events more because in survival, you better be ready if it happens again. And when the survival gene is switched on, you could have 10 really great things that happen to you in your day. And you just have one bad thing that happens, and you cannot take your attention off that unhappy thing because the survival gene is switched on.
It's really interesting. How does epigenetics come into play in all this? Like, what's actually happening? You've talked pretty profoundly about proteins and like really at a deep level how we're signaling to our genetics to create these kinds of changes. What does that actually look like?
Well, epigenetics, epi means above the gene, and many years ago after the DNA helix was discovered by Watson and Crick, they said the blueprints of life, you know, all diseases are created from genes. Turns out less than 5%, more like 1% of people on the planet are born with a genetic condition like type 1 diabetes or Tay-Sachs disease or sickle cell anemia. The other 95 to 99% are created by lifestyle and by choices. You can take two identical twins, exact same genome. One dies at 51, the other one dies at 85. Same gene, different environment. So all of a sudden they said we lied. That was wrong. It's not genes that create disease. It's the environment that signals the gene that creates disease. Well, okay. But that's not the whole truth too, because you could have two people working side by side in the same factory. One gets cancer after being exposed to a carcinogenic for 25 years. Both working for 25 years, the other one has no cancer at all. So there must be some internal order that would cause one person to not get it while another one does. So is it possible then, if the environment signals the gene, and it does, and the end product of an experience in the environment is called an emotion, can you signal the gene ahead of the environment by embracing an elevated emotion? We've done the research on this. We've measured 7,500 different gene expressions in a group of people that came to an advanced event for 4 days. And we had them doing a seated meditation, a walking meditation, a laying down meditation, a standing meditation. And at the end of 4 days, just 4 days, the common 8 genes that were upregulated, 2 genes to suppress cancer cells and tumor growth, 2 genes for neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in response to novel experiences and learning, the gene that signals stem cells to go to damaged areas and repair them, the gene for oxidative stress, was upregulated. We're sort of seeing all these genes that are very, very healthy to cause the body to flourish. Imagine if people were doing that for 3 months. We also measured telomeres, the little shoestrings on the end of DNA that tell us our biological age. We asked people to do the work, meditation, 5 out of 7 days for 60 days. Measure their telomeres that determine their biological age. 60 days later, 74% of the people lengthened their telomeres. 40% is significant change. 20% is a very remarkable change. That means that they got a little bit of their life back. If it lengthened by 10%, they got 10% of their life back.
Before I ask my last question, tell these guys where they can find you online.
Sure, my website is just drjoedispenza.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all over.
And then my final question, what's the impact that you want to have on the world?
I think that the end game for me is to empower people to such a degree that they realize that they need less things outside of them to make them happy, less things outside of them to regulate their moods and their behaviors, and that they begin to use the kind of power that we all have access to, and to really to change the world, to make a difference so that there's more peace, there's more wholeness, there's more connection, that we support and love each other, we serve better. And I think that we have to start, for the most part, if everybody's working on themselves and trying and doing their best to present the greatest ideal of themselves to the world, I think the world will be a better place. And so that's my passion, and I'm witnessing it happening more than I ever thought I would.
Joe, thank you so much for being here. It was amazing having you. Guys, go watch this man's videos. They are some of the best explanations of what's going on inside the mind that I've ever come across. There were several that I literally have people in my life that I'm going to force to sit down and watch these things. It's just incredible explanations of how you create yourself out of the things that you do habitually. The way that you think creates a feeling, the way that you feel creates thinking that matches that, and then you get in this cycle, and that coming down to that personality ultimately being a finite set of patterns in your brain, I think is really, really illuminating in terms of how we actually experience the world. And I think when people understand that it's within your control, that you don't have to believe every thought that you think, that you can step outside of that you can leverage metacognition to think about your thinking and deconstruct it and decide what you want to think about and start focusing on that and create an entirely different version of yourself that has new, elevated feelings, that's over on the side of the positivity, empowering yourself. I think it's really incredible, and he gets deep into the mechanistic stuff, which I love. You guys will not regret diving deep into this man's world. I think you will get some incredible revelations. All right, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, and until next time, my friends, be legendary. Thank you so much for being here. That was incredible.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching and being a part of this community. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. You're going to get weekly videos on building a growth mindset, cultivating grit, and unlocking your full potential. Hey everybody, you are about to watch an amazing episode of Impact Theory with David Goggins. I love this episode more than I can tell you. I absolutely am blown away by David Goggins himself, but I want to give a full disclaimer. First of all, this man swears a lot, and when I say that, you know it's an issue. So if you have kids around you, now would be the time to get them out. Also, his worldview is ultra hardcore. I'm not recommending that everybody do what he does, which is pretty extreme, but I just wanted to give everybody a full warning ahead of time. But I think this man is incredible. But let it be said, you have been warned. And now, welcome to Impact Theory with David Goggins.
Everybody, welcome to Impact Theory. You are here, my friends, because you believe that human potential is nearly limitless, but you know that having potential is not the same as actually doing something with it. So our goal with this show and company is to introduce you to the people and ideas that will help you actually execute on your dreams. All All right. Today's guest is widely considered to be the toughest man on the planet and one of the greatest endurance athletes of all time. But if you're tempted to dismiss him as the product of amazing genetics, great parenting, or proven performance-enhancing drugs, think again. He grew up in an abusive household, spent his high school years as one of only a small number of black kids in a tiny Indiana town roughly 20 miles from where the KKK was founded. He had to endure relentless bullying, and he barely managed to graduate with a 1.6 GPA. He struggled with obesity twice in his life, weighing in at over 300 pounds, had severe allergies, sickle cell trait, and a congenital heart disease that left him with a hole in his heart the size of a poker chip. He grew up feeling soft and weak with no self-esteem, but despite all of that, one day he decided he was going to stop saying woe is me and start kicking some ass. That set him on a path to transforming himself into the hardest man alive. Did he do it? Well, he's the only member of the U.S. Armed Forces to complete SEAL training, the U.S. Army Ranger School, and the Air Force Tactical Air Controller training. He's completed the infamous Destroyer of Men, known as Hell Week, 3 times, including 2 in a single year, and 1 that he started and finished with multiple stress fractures and a hernia. He served in combat in Iraq, was the bodyguard for the Iraqi Prime Minister. He once held the Guinness World Record for most pull-ups in 24 hours at 4,030. He's run 8 consecutive 100-mile races over 8 back-to-back weekends. He ran over 7,000 miles in a single year, and that is the equivalent of running 267 marathons. I think it is abundantly clear this man is a self-made beast. So please, help me in welcoming the man who once ran an ultra-marathon with pneumonia, the king of no excuses, David Goggins. Thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, I assure you. The things that you've done are absolutely incredible, but what I find fascinating is if you just read your litany of things that you've accomplished, you do just assume, oh, you must be really gifted. You're shredded, you're in great shape, but when you see the before picture, it's pretty startling.
Right.
So what was that moment like, looking in the mirror the day you decide, okay, wait, enough is enough?
Well, it was pretty crazy for me. It took a while to get to that point where enough was enough. What happened, I came home one night from work spraying for cockroaches. And long story short, I turned on the Discovery Channel. I saw some guys going through Navy SEAL training. And they were going through Hell Week and they were getting their ass just beat. You know, in and out of the water, guys ringing the bell. They was suffering. And I was weighing like 297 pounds. And I had to make a change in my life. You know, I was at an all-time low, and I wasn't going anywhere, and I was exactly what everybody said I was going to be, which was nothing. So I had to make a change.
What was it about seeing suffering that's really interesting? And I actually get it, but I want to hear you explain it. Why suffering was the thing that triggered that thought?
Well, for me, growing up, I came from a horrible background. I got called nigger every day of my life growing up, living in a small town. The Klan headquarters at that time was about 20 minutes from where I lived. One of the high ups in the KKK, son, sat behind me in 2 classes, so he called me nigger all the time. I got my first car, they spray painted nigger, we're gonna kill you on it. So I was just an insecure, scared kid. And the only way I could find myself was through putting myself through the worst thing possible.
How'd you have the insight though? Like that's so counterintuitive. Like most people, that's precisely what they're trying to get away from.
Right.
So what was it in you at that moment? You're overweight, you've been bullied essentially your entire life up to that point. What makes you go, all right, motherfucker, like that's what I've got to do?
Well, no one was helping me out. So my dad made my mom kind of irregular. So she worked 3 jobs, went to college full time, so she was never around. One time this person drew a picture of me and said, we're gonna kill you nigger on my Spanish notebook. And I took it to my principal. And my principal said, they spelled nigger Niger. That was the best advice he can give me. So long story short, what I realized was no one was here to help me. And the feeling I had every morning, I started shaving my head when I was 16 years old. And the feeling I had every morning, I looked in the mirror, was horrible. And I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And how I felt was a kid going nowhere, a kid that was scared. And most kids will accept that and look for help. But the best thing that happened to me, no one helped me. No one felt sorry for me. No one looked at me and said, like this day and age, they'll take you in and they'll tell everybody, stop picking on this person. Back then, they didn't care. The KKK marched in our 4th of July parades. They had to stay 100 yards back, but they marched in it.
Wow.
That's how this town was. And my mom cared about me, but my dad took our soul. And she, you know, did the best she could. I had to figure out I wasn't going to be a punk kid all my life. So the only way I could turn it around was to suffer. I had to build calluses in my brain the same way I built calluses on my hands. So I broke the Guinness Book of World Records for pull-ups a long time ago, but I failed at it twice. And I did 67,000 pull-ups in trying to break this record. So to do 4,030 pull-ups, I had to do 67,000 for training for that.
Wow.
And so what I realized is for me to become the man I wanted to become, I saw myself as the weakest person God ever created. But I never blamed God for anything he did to me. So I wanted to change that to be the hardest man ever created. Am I that? I don't know, but you had to have a goal. And my goal when I was sitting there, not going to school, being bullied, having no self-esteem, my goal was the only person that's going to turn this person around is me. The only way I can turn it around is put myself through the worst things possible a human being can ever endure. And that'd be the only way that I can build this brain to handle anything that comes in front of it, callousing my mind through pain and suffering.
That's so powerful. It's such an amazing insight. So obviously listening to some of the stuff that you're talking about, and one thing that you say often is, you know, it's hard to stay hard or get hard when you're living in, you know, like you even said at one point, in a big mansion in Beverly Hills, right? So I was sitting there thinking, you're absolutely right. But what I find so interesting is how we, as a species, run from pain, we run from suffering. And one of the reasons, I've talked about this before, but one of the reasons my wife and I don't have kids is I firmly believe that you need something that is brutal, is difficult, is hardship. It knocks you off center. It makes you feel bad, because in the process of rebuilding and clawing back from that, climbing up, then you can become something. But unless you've been tested, unless you've gone through the ringer, you've got no hope. So how do you take somebody that you love and force them through that? And I think that what you've done is maybe the ultimate expression of that, which is how do you put yourself through it? Right? You didn't have to do any of that. So in the end, like, what would your advice be to that 16-year-old kid who's staring in the mirror, does not like what he sees, but is still running from adversity?
Well, my biggest advice to him is that, first of all, he won't like what I say to him. Because I'm going to say the exact opposite of what the world, today's world, is saying. So we read a bunch of books nowadays. As humans, we want to find out how to be someone else. What we don't do is we don't go inside. So literally turn yourself inside out. Read the book that's like we're writing a book every day of our life, but we never read that book. So what I would challenge this young man or young woman to do is you have to look inside of yourself to see what you really want. What are you passionate about? We use these words and these little phrases of only the strong survive and all this other crap. They're all just fucking words. I get so tired of hearing people just talking. Like right now, someone may think Goggins is just talking. You don't know me. So when I speak from passion, I speak from experience, I speak from suffering. I have to tell this young man or woman that the only way I believe, this is just my experience in life, the only way you're ever going to get to the other side of this journey is you have got to suffer to grow. To grow, you must suffer. And some people will get it and some people won't. But they have to see what their journey is to start their journey. Several people live to be 100 years old, and they have great lives, and they have great kids. Their kids go to college and all sort of stuff. But somewhere in their life, there was a point where they had a decision to make. They can go left or right on this path. Left was the easy route. Right was the hard route. A lot of people take the easy route. And they had a good life that way, But the better life was going to the right side. And you may have 20 years of pain and suffering to get past it, but a lot of us die never truly starting our journey. And I would tell this young person, you got to start your journey. It may suck, but it will come out the other side where you're coasting. So
it's really, I want to go back to what you're saying about that we write our own book, we're writing it every day, but we actually don't take the time to read it. So what do you, as you were saying that, here's what I was saying, tell me if this is where you were going, that basically you're writing down these things that are sort of becoming your identity, about being weak, about avoiding suffering, about being soft, essentially. I mean, all the things sort of by default, they're in that camp. And as you were saying that, I was imagining you sort of taking that pen and beginning to write your own story and writing things that you knew, looking back on, that you would be proud of.
Right.
Like going through the military and doing the hardest training, some of the ultra endurance stuff that you've done, which is on broken feet. I mean, it's like so crazy. In fact, one, is that what you meant by writing that story?
So what I meant by that is, like, every day we're seeing who we are as people. When I was growing up, I lied for people to accept me because I didn't accept myself. So I would make up stories so that you would accept me into your world. I would, everything I did was for someone else to like me. It wasn't until I started reading my own book about how pathetic I was as a human being. I could blame my dad, I could blame kids at school, I could blame having health issues, ADD, my mom not being around. Great mom, but she was doing her thing.
Right.
I could blame a lot of people. And that's the book I was reading. And I put it off on everybody else. It wasn't until I said, you know what, for me to fix this, I gotta read what the fuck is wrong with David Goggins. Not blame anybody. Read my book and say, okay, I'm afraid of my shadow. How can I overcome that? Go in the military, get your ass kicked, do things you hate to do, be uncomfortable every fucking day of your life. Roger that. I'm not the smartest kid in the world. Okay. Instead of somebody saying, oh no, you're smart. No, don't say that to yourself. I said to myself, no, I'm a dumb motherfucker. Okay, roger that. How you get smarter? Educate yourself. So the things that we run from the truth. We're running from the truth, man. So the only way I became successful was going towards the truth. As painful and as brutal as it is, it changed me. It allowed me to become, in my own right, who I am today.
One of the most powerful things I think anybody can do, and this, so I used to struggle with self-esteem, and my thing was I focused on being smart, and I just wasn't that smart. I focused on being right, and I was wrong a lot. And so it created this weird thing in my life where I would constantly try to put myself around people who were less and less intelligent so that I could feel good about myself. And the bad news is it's actually a really good strategy for that.
Right. Being
around people that were less intelligent than me really did make me feel good. I felt good about myself. But I literally referred to myself at the time as the king of remedial jobs because those were the only jobs that I could really shine at. Right. And it wasn't until I realized I can actually change what I build my self-esteem around. And I can start building my self-esteem around, instead of being right or being smart, being a learner and being willing to admit when I'm wrong. And so the thing that I began to build my self-esteem around was being willing and able to stare at my inadequacies, right? What you said, like, I fully understand, like, how this this interview is going to be. I mean, you warned me ahead of time. This interview is going to be bifurcating. People are going to love it, and some people are going to hate it. But dude, I so believe in the notion of looking at yourself, and if you are pathetic, owning it, right, and saying. Because my thing is you can change it, right? Which you have proven in no uncertain terms. But if you don't admit it, you're never going to be on the path to changing it.
Exactly.
Walk us through, because this is one of those crazy stories. I can't imagine how you pulled this off. Your first ultra marathon, which you got into like really fast, and one why you did it, because I think that's incredible.
The first ultra marathon wasn't smart at all. So basically what happened was, I was at military free fall school with Morgan Luttrell. Marcus Luttrell, if you guys don't know, was the lone survivor, the guy. He was in a bad op went bad. He was the only Navy SEAL that lived. Long story short, you gotta get the book, read Lone Survivor, great story. Morgan is Marcus Luttrell's twin brother, and I was there with Marcus. So what happened was, myself and Morgan were in free fall school. At the same exact time, Marcus was in the worst incident in SEAL history. So I knew that Marcus might be dead. He wasn't dead, everybody else was dead. So I actually brought Morgan, I actually told Morgan, hey man, your brother was in a bad incident. I don't know if he's alive. I don't know what's going on. Long story short, Marcus is alive, and I go on to want to raise money for families. All these guys died. They all had kids. I want to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. It's a foundation where 100% tuition goes to these kids to go to college, full tuition, whatever. So I found this great foundation. I'm going to raise money for it. So I said, you know what? I have to Google something that's evil, something very hard. I knew nothing about ultra marathons. I hadn't even run a marathon. I knew nothing about this world. So I Googled the top 10 hardest races in the world. And what comes up is a Badwater 135. It's a 135-mile race through Death Valley in the summertime. I thought it was a stage race. I thought it was a race where you run like 20 miles, set up camp, barbecue outside, and then go run some more the next day. So I called the race director up at the race and said, hey, Chris, his name is Chris Costin, I want to do your race. So we had a long conversation. I was much heavier then, and I hadn't put running shoes on in over a year.
How heavy are you at this point?
I'm around between 240 to 270.
Whoa.
I'm in there. I'm in that range. My weight has varied a lot through the SEAL teams and out of the SEAL teams, so I was a heavy guy. But the long and short of it all was I hadn't put running shoes on in over a year. I was a big-time power lifter. I lifted weights heavy. That's what I did. I got back home from Iraq, went straight to free fall school, and then this happened. So I called Chris Costin up on a Wednesday. He says, look, man, the only way you can qualify for my race is to run 100 miles at one time in 24 hours or less. There happened to be a race that Saturday, so 4 days later. And he said, if you qualify by running 100 miles or less in 24 hours, I will consider you my race. I'm gonna cut to the chase. I signed up for this race. It's called the San Diego One Day, where you run around a 1 mile track for 24 hours to see how many miles you can get. My goal was 100 miles. So I got to mile 70, and I cleared 70 miles in like 12, 13 hours pretty quickly. But I was done. My feet were broken. I was stress fractures, shin splints, muscles were tearing. I was in bad shape. I was eating Ritz crackers and drinking Mileplex. That's all I had. No water, didn't know what the hell I was doing out there. Had on some tube socks. It was just ridiculous. It was a clown show. So I sat down at mile 70, and at this time I was married. And I look at my wife and I was like, I'm messed up bad. So I literally start to turn white. And when a black guy turns white, you're pretty fucked up. So here I am, I'm all fucked up in this chair. I'm at mile 70, I think I got 30 fucking miles to go. I'm jacked up. I gotta go to the bathroom. And the bathroom's like 20 feet from me. It's a porta potty. I can't get out of the fucking chair. So I'm peeing blood down my leg.
Whoa.
Pooping up my fucking back. And I got 30 miles to go. And I can't stand up because my blood pressure's all messed up. I've been in 3 hell weeks, Ranger School, overcome so many obstacles in my life. This last 30 miles of this race is when I realized a human being is not so human. We have the ability to go in such a space if you're willing to suffer, and I mean suffer. Your brain and your body, once connected together, can do anything. And this 30 miles was the life-changing moment. I was out of it. I was in the worst pain in my entire life. I was, to me, on the brink of death. And I was able to chunk this 30 damn miles into small pieces. I was so driven, and I'm not gonna say motivated because motivation's crap. Motivation comes and goes. When you're driven, whatever's in front of you will get destroyed. So I sat in this chair and I was so driven to succeed in this race. And at this time, everybody goes, were you thinking about the guys that died? And I'm not gonna lie to you, I wasn't. This became a personal thing. This became me against this race, me against the kids that called me nigger, me against me. It just became something that I took so violently personal. And I broke this thing down into small pieces. I said, okay, I gotta get nutrition. I gotta be able to stand up before I can get off this curb and get off this chair and be able to go 30 miles. So I went through all these small steps and I was able to stand up. And then from standing up, I was literally walking around with my wife at the time, and she goes, "You're not gonna make the time." She goes, "You're walking like 30-some minute miles." I got to mile 81, and the second she said that I'm not gonna make the time, I ran the last 19 miles nonstop. And I can show you right now when we get done with this. Matter of fact, I'm gonna show you right now. This was years ago, and I had to put compression tape on my ankle. And so this was years ago. I had literally the size of $50. I had to get compression tape, and I taped up my ankles, and I taped up my feet. And that's how I got through that race.
Was it like a hematoma? I mean, what
what happened was, like my shins hurt so bad from having stretch fractures that the only way I could continue on was I taped it so I wasn't doing the flexor motion that activates your shins. So I taped my ankles and my shins up, and I got that from, because in my third hell week, they weren't gonna let me go back to training anymore.
Right.
So I literally went through all of BUD/S, the last SEAL training with stretch fractures and shin splints. And how I did it was I would tape my ankles all the way up to my calf every morning. So for the first hour, the pain was excruciating. But what happened is my feet would go numb. And I did that every single day for 6 months.
Whoa.
And that's how I got through my third hell week, because I was so broken from the first two that the commander said, "Hey, the CEO said this is your last time we're seeing you through." So that's how I got the idea to do that. So with the right, and people may listen to this and say, this guy is sadistic, he's crazy, no, if you know how I came up, you realize I was just a scared kid that found drive and passion to do something much better than what he thought he was. That's all it is.
God, I'm gonna ask the question. I don't know if you have a good answer for this. I don't know if there is a good answer for this, but even I want to know. How do you find and cultivate that drive? Like, there is a kid right now watching this, man, and feel like you felt. They feel lost, alone, broken, stupid, lazy, like they're never going to amount to anything. And what you're talking about is the closest thing to a fucking superpower that this kid has ever heard. And right now he's on the edge of his seat. How does he like force himself to take that first step?
I'm very fortunate that I grew up in a time when there was no phones and there was no social media. And I suggest, yes, I'm on social media on a very limited basis because I have a story to tell, and it's a great platform. Use it as a platform, don't use it as your life. My biggest advice to get everybody in the world is, like I say, we live in an external world. Everything is you gotta see it, touch it, it's external. If you can, for the rest of your life, live inside of yourself, stop listening to people who are calling you fat, gay, transsexual, nigger. Everything that is makes no sense. All these insecure people putting their insecurities on you, you gotta flush it out. You gotta just be whoever the hell God or whatever the hell you believe in. If you believe in nothing but yourself, I don't care what it is. You gotta take everything and throw it away. You have to believe in one thing, and that is yourself. And I'm not saying don't believe in God or what you believe in, but right now, for you to find greatness in yourself, you're not going to find it by looking in a book or by even hearing me. I may give you the spark, but you've got to go inside yourself to find it. And that means you got to be quiet. Shut the fuck up, go in a room, stop talking, search your soul, search your mind, search your abilities, and you'll find it. But if you're not looking for it, you won't find it. So you got to go start your journey. And the journey starts with you finding, why the hell am I here on this planet Earth? Why am I here? And if you don't know that, you will live the rest of your life searching, always asking the question, why?
So on that last 19 miles, feet are broken, ankles are taped, shin splints, stress fractures. What are the words that are going through your mind? Are you in the cookie jar?
I'm deep in the cookie jar, and the cookie jar is something that I've made up of all the failures of my life, all the things that I failed and I went back. I failed and I went back and I finally succeeded. All the things that kicked my ass. I put them all in the cookie jar because at times of hell, even the hardest men, in times of suffering, what we do is we forget how hard we really are. Because that's what suffering is. Suffering is a test. That's all it is. Suffering is the true test of life. And so that cookie jar travels in my brain. So whenever I get put in a situation where I have poopy pants, the woe is me mentality of, oh my God, life sucks, I take a second, I take the 1 second decision. I step out of my life for 1 second, go in the cookie jar, pull up, oh, motherfucker, you went 3 hell weeks and finished 2. One of those hell weeks a guy died because it was so bad. Oh, you are a motherfucking badass. You are. I put it back in the cookie jar and I remember who the fuck I really am. I'm not the kid that was called nigga. I'm not the scared kid. This is who I am. It's a reminder of who you truly are at the core of yourself. But what I was saying to myself the whole time on that track, and this is what I say to myself. Self-talk and visualization are 2 keys to my success. I believe for that last 19 miles, I was indestructible. Because I took myself in that chair, crapping up my back, peeing blood down my leg, shin splint, stress fractures. I use all that for motivation versus negativity. I use it for motivation. I said to myself, who on this fucking earth would still be going on? You are. You are. You gotta be the hardest motherfucker on the planet. Is it true? I don't give a fuck. At that time, it got me to the finish line of that fucking race. I believed it. I believe it today. I believed it enough to where my body said, he's not gonna stop. And I took all the negative things, I need to go to the hospital, this and that, and I used it all. Who the hell would even think about taping stretch fractures? All those things I use for motivation.
I'm going to use it to motivate. I mean, that's so fucking powerful. Talk to me about the dark side. It's something that I'm sure you take a lot of heat for. It's something that I think a lot about. I believe people should intentionally be motivated by beauty and rage. And so many people are afraid of the negative. What power have you found in the darkness?
First, before I answer that question, I want to say, everybody listening to this, I'm the happiest man on the planet. So people may take this, and as so many people do, we live in a very weakened society. So when they hear a throwback guy like me from back in the ancient days of Garanimals, they often think this guy is just whatever. So if you think that I'm some unhappy guy, you're wrong. Having lived the life I've lived and seeing the other side, not being afraid to attack what was in front of me, has made me happy.
Say that again. In fact, let me make sure I understood it. Getting to the point where you're not afraid to face the thing on the other side of the door that wants to attack you has made you happy.
Right.
It's really powerful. I hope people heard that.
Right. That made me very happy. So basically, I just don't walk around with a daggone smile on my face all the time. So, Merry Christmas. But basically, what the dark side is we all have a cookie jar, and we all have a jar of fuck.
That's its official name.
It's a jar of fuck, man, where shit just ain't going right. And in Hell Week, what they do in Hell Week, because this is where I really went to the dark side. What they do in Hell Week is they design Hell Week to find your flaws. And they do a really good job of that. It's 130 hours of continuous training. You may get 2 hours of sleep. And they beat the shit out of you and find everything wrong with your mentality. And then they start helping. And that's the beauty of it. And for me, I'm not some nasty God-given guy. I don't have a great bit of talent in anything. So what got me through horrible times was the dark side. My name is David Goggins. I created Goggins. Goggins is the guy that can take anything you put in him. You want to break my motherfucking legs? So be it. I have a way of going to a place like I did in that race where all the pain and suffering that they put on top of me in Hell Week, I will reverse that pain and suffering, and I will take your soul. So every instructor that put me through buds, my job, what drove me, was I wanted you to go home that night after you beat the living shit out of me and I smiled in your face. I wanted you to feel worse than I did, and you were going home to a nice warm bed with your wife or your kids and a nice meal, and I was still out there in the grit, suffering for another 100 hours. I wanted you to think about me, knowing that I'm comfortable, being very unfucking comfortable. And I want you to think about when you went through fucking hell, how uncomfortable you were and how bad you wanted to quit, knowing I'm not thinking that fucking way. So the dark side is something that I've designed. It's an evil place I can go that very few things can hurt. I use the hurt you're trying to put on me, I flip it upside down and use it. You trying to use it for kryptonite? No. It's power pillars for me. I'm using it for strength. I just flip negative into positive, that's all it is.
I heard you doing an interview one time, and the person was trying to like see the sort of empowerment, the beauty in that, and you were like, no, it's darkness. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that I'm utterly fascinated with comic books, and one of the reasons that I'm so intrigued by Batman is he literally uses the darkness, the sickness that he has over what happened to him and his family to propel him forward for decades to keep driving, and it's most people are broken by the bad things that happen to them, but every now and then there's a Goggins. There's somebody who understands how to use that power, to understands how, as a human being, it fucking drives you. Revenge is powerful. Like, to be able to tap into that in a way that's controlled,
That's right.
but to be able to bring it in, to use it, to feel the energy. There is an intoxication to rage. And I don't think people are honest about it when they talk about it. There's a fucking intoxication to that. And if you can tap into it and leverage it, not get lost to it, which is why I know you always caveat it by saying, look, I'm a fucking happy guy. Like, that's not what we're talking about right now,
Right.
but I'm a happy guy.
Right.
So you can't get overtaken by it, but it's there and it is so fucking powerful.
Real. That's why when you said before this whole thing started, you said I can be me. The second you said I can cuss and be me, and cussing, people say, man, you cuss all the fucking time, why? Well, I hate to say it, the best way for me to get how I feel across, I can't sit here and say, you know what, yeah, I went through Hell Week and man, it was really hard. No, that motherfucker takes your damn soul, rips it inside out, and then they say, now we're going to fucking start. It allows me to express where I was at a point of my life. If I don't give you all of me, why the hell am I here? Why, how will you learn from me? People take so much offense to me. You will never learn from people if we always tap dance around the truth.
I love that.
We tap dance around the truth by finding the right words so I don't hurt you because you have thin skin. No, tighten up, people. It's okay. Trust me, it's okay. You might be called nigger one day. It's okay. You might be called some Jewish word or some faggot or gay word. It's okay. Let them call you that. What are you going to do now? They don't own your life. How are you going to control that now? How are you going to flip it upside down and say, Roger that, now I'm going to harness this shit, and you'll read about me years from now? How? That's the question. How are you going to do that? Thicken your skin. Become more of a human being. Don't be afraid of the reflection in the mirror. That's all you can be afraid of. Once you overcome the reflection in the mirror, you've done it.
I love that, man. You once said that if you were growing up in this generation, that you would have a field day because you would take their souls. What did you mean by that?
The younger generation quits. Not everybody. So I gotta put that. People get their butt hurt. So not everybody. Most of this generation quits the second they get talked to. You did this wrong, or they get yelled at. It's so easy to be great nowadays because everybody else is, most people are weak. This is a softened generation. So if you have any mental toughness, any ability, if you have any fraction of self-discipline, the ability to not want to do it but still do it. People have a hard thing to understand. I hate to run. And what makes me so crazy, it doesn't anymore, you go, well, why do you run if you hate it? What are you talking about? I don't want to take showers and eat either. I hate that too. That's life, man. It wasn't until I changed that mentality that I became somebody. I hated going to school, so guess what? I was dumb as shit. That's what, 1 + 1 is 2. But if you can get through to doing things that you hate to do, on the other side is greatness. That's what people don't understand. By me running, I am callous in my mind. I'm not training for a race. I'm training for life. I'm training for the time when I get that 2 o'clock in the morning call that my mom is dead or something happens tragic in life. I don't fall apart. I'm training my mind and my body and my spirit so it's all one, so I can handle what life is gonna throw at me. Because the life I've lived, it throws a whole bunch at you. And if you're not physically and mentally prepared for that, you're just gonna crumble, and you're good for nobody.
Talk to me about what it takes to be on one side of a door in Iraq or anywhere, knowing on the other side of the door, people who are not afraid of you, they're ready for you to come in, and you still have, and they have guns, and you still have to breach that door.
That's a great question. That's a very scary situation when you are on one side of the door and your mind is racing, because on the other side of that door, it could be no one. It could be 4 guys with 4 AK-47s. That door you're about to open could be booby-trapped. So once you open it, boom, your legs are gone. So there's 1,000 things you think about when you're the first guy, second guy, third guy, getting ready to go in a room and flood it. And that's why I talk about the warrior mentality. And that's why so many people are lost when I start talking. You have the right. You're lucky that you don't have to think like warriors think. You're very privileged. I chose this world to be a warrior, and I would choose it again if I came back to this world. But the mentality of a warrior is very different than normal mentality. You must be that person on that door, get ready to open it, thinking to yourself, if I die, so be it.
Beware.
The only way you can go in that door is knowing there's a great chance you're gonna die. It's like being a SEAL, you train with live ammo. You jump out of an airplane, everything you do, you could die. So to be a warrior, why people don't understand me, I'm glad you don't understand me. Merry Christmas, good on you. Because being a warrior takes a whole different mindset. A whole different mindset to know that there's a great chance I may not be in the military. Like, I was in for 21 years. I'm lucky. I'm very lucky that I'm alive, able to talk to you, able to still run. But when you sign up on that dotted line to be like a SEAL, your mentality changes. I may not live. You gotta accept that. And that's the mentality you have. And that's what makes you a warrior. If you're scared to die, you're a bad warrior.
And so what do you use to push through? Is that a Goggins moment? Is that finding the darkness? I'm going through hell, I'll become the devil if I have to? Like, what is that moment? What are you pulling up inside? I'm
pulling up a lot of the dark side of me, but I'm also looking at the guys to my left and to my right, realizing that we're here together, man. And I have to be strong for them, and they gotta be strong for me. A lot of people, either you like me or you don't, even in the SEAL teams, but when you get to that door or you get on that mission or you get on that op, all that shit's out the door, man. You know, you do it honestly. I mean, people say all the time in these movies and shit, you really out there fighting for that guy beside you. And you can't be a coward. Because you know what, and this is how I look at everything I do now in life, and this sums it up. I hated jumping out of airplanes. I hated shooting guns. I hated the job as a Navy SEAL. But I did it because I wanted to change myself. Everything I do, I'm not really comfortable doing. But if you choose to go that route, to go be a Navy SEAL, you might as well go be the hardest motherfucker in the world. Because if you're choosing to do something, you have 2 routes. You can go there and be a little weak person and get through barely, and that's your reputation. Or you can go through the hardest guy you can possibly be, and that's your reputation. So my whole thing is, if you're gonna choose to open that fucking door in Iraq or Afghanistan, open the motherfucker and go in hard. Because they're gonna remember you, by slowly opening it and peeking in. So if you're gonna open it and you made the mind to open it, don't crack it open. Open the fucking door, go in. That's with life. If you're choosing to do something, attack it. Because they're gonna remember you as not attacking. So I want to be remembered. You can hate me, but there's one thing you can't say about me. I didn't attack it. So that's the mentality to have. If you're gonna do something, you might as well attack it, because you can do it anyway.
Do you use that in civilian life? Like, do you still employ the, I'm gonna attack it, I'm gonna take their souls? Like, how does that play out in a non-combat zone?
It still works for me in life as far as attacking things, because no matter what I want to, no matter what avenue I choose, I want to be the very best. And the very best may not be I'm number one. The very best is, did I leave everything inside of me out there? So attacking is not like, oh, I want to win this or win that or be the best. The best is I'm running against myself in everything I do, and that's what I attack. I attack myself. I'm always questioning myself. I'm always holding myself accountable.
Talk to me about the accountability mirror.
So the accountability mirror is something that I kind of came up with in high school. Like I said, I started shaving my head when I was 16, and I got caught up in trying to impress so many people because no one liked me. So I developed so many different identities. Let me sag my pants. You know, let me pull my pants up. Let me talk this way or act this way or be this way or whatever the hell it may be. God, dog, there's so many different things I did to try to fit in with so many different groups that when you look in the mirror, that's the one person you can't lie to. So every morning I would shave my head thinking, God, I would reflect back on some of the lies I may have told somebody or some of the ways I acted that I didn't feel comfortable doing. And I did it to impress other normal people. The key word there is normal, everyday people. I was trying to make other people like me. How pathetic is that? So this mirror would always tell me, my reflection would say, God, you are a pathetic man. How does that feel every day to be this way? So I would just start having myself accountable. How did I attack today? How did I attack yesterday? And if I didn't do something I was proud of, I would write down a sticky note and I would fix it. So then my senior year in high school, it was a totally different David Goggins.
Can you give an example of something that you wrote down and fixed?
All right, there was a lunch table. I wanted to sit the cool guy lunch table, man. I wanted, even though everybody was calling me a nigger all the time, I wanted to try to act like somebody I wasn't so I could fit in. And I sold my soul to the devil. You know, trying to act like, I'm David fucking Goggins. That's who I am. And so I wrote down on a piece of paper, fuck the table, sit by your fucking self. And that's what I did, and guess what happened? My table became a table people started sitting at. Because a whole bunch of people in that lunchroom felt exactly like I did. I had a laundry list of things that I write down in this fix. So I write it down and fix it.
Were there things that you looked to for role models, people that you were like taking ideas from, like why pull your pants up? If that's the popular style, like what was giving, either you were the single most insightful person I've ever met, which by the way is entirely possible having listened to enough of your material, or like you had a treasure trove of people that gave you great ideas. Even if they were like fictional or movie or, athletes or whatever, but.
It was funny, man. One movie I watched all the time was Rocky.
Great choice.
Rocky 1. And I related to Rocky a lot because of one of the smart guy, just tried real hard. And the one scene that I related a lot of my life to, still to this day, was Rocky 1, round 14. And this is where I got taken souls from. If you look at round 14 of Rocky 1, Apollo is beating the shit out of Rocky. Rocky falls down this corner. Mickey's saying, stay down, stay down. Rocky didn't hear a fucking soul. Apollo, after he knocks him down, turns around, hands in the air, like I finally knocked down this animal. Apollo doesn't know it, but Rocky is getting up. Apollo turns around the second Rocky gets up. And Apollo looks at Rocky, and Apollo looks at him with a look of like Rocky just took his soul. Apollo shakes his head, and Rocky has his gloves and he motions towards Apollo. Come on, motherfucker, I'm still here. And this song comes on that I played. So when I brought the Ginsburg the World Record, it took me 17 hours to do 4,030 pull-ups. I listened to one song for 17 hours. 2 minutes and 17 seconds. I listened to that song for 17 hours, nonstop, on repeat. So the image in my mind of a man was not one that had earrings, sagged his pants. I had this image in my head, and I was going to fulfill that. And I didn't do any trends. I stopped trending. I stopped being this guy who whatever was new, fuck it, that's not what I believe in. I'm doing this. This is what I want to be. This is what I'm going to be. So.
It's incredible. How do you experience beauty and joy in your life? What situations do you put yourself in? What makes you laugh? What's the fun stuff for you?
It's funny you say that. I just retired from the military in November 2015. And I was going and going and going and going. And I never really, I was a happy guy, but I'm never in the moment of like sitting back and I want to travel here to have fun and do this and that. I've never been that person. But the first time I really got a chance to experience true happiness and true peace was so what I did to myself to become who I am today, it takes a great toll on your body. So I believe God gave me time to rest and he took me out of commission. Not even the mind of God could get me back up. So I had about a good 6-7 months where I was out. And when I was out, I had time to reflect on all I had accomplished. And that was the first time in my life where I sat back and said, wow. Because only I may be telling you some of the story, I know the exact truth of how brutal my life was and how I shouldn't be on this show today and how the mind and how beautiful it is. So what brings me joy and happiness is knowing how beautiful the mind is. And I'm one of the few people that didn't read about it, didn't experience it through some drug. I got to experience the beauty of true fucking willpower. True, fuck you, I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna fucking fail, I'm gonna fucking fail, I'm gonna fucking fail, and I will succeed. Just me talking about that gives me a feeling, I know what I did. And I don't need to travel somewhere or to have this or have that. I have it all here in my mind. The beauty is remembering this young, dumb, what people call nigger, is now where I'm at today. And that is, when you finally get to that point for me, it's forever lasting peace. I could die right now on this show and I'll be happy, man. So that's my happiness, is my reflection on the suffering of my journey, knowing I never quit, nor was I guided by anybody on this earth. I was guided by something much more powerful, and I listened. And I chose the path of most resistance. Talent not required.
I love that. You've said that you lived the life of a monk. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What does that look like? Why do you do that?
So I stretch out every day for at least 2 hours. I don't drink. I don't go out. My regimen is I wake up, have oatmeal, run, come back, hit the weights. I'm a big sports guy. I don't leave the house if at all, but do stuff like this. And I stretch out at nighttime. I find people that I trust, which is a very small group of people who are honest and true to me, people who will die for me, and I'll die for them, which is a fucking small. Sure. And everybody else, man, do you. And I stay to myself. And I let you do you. I don't judge people. I don't criticize you. You want to be a douchebag and be an ass and not love this country, do whatever you want to do? I don't care, man. I fought for this country for you to do you. And I am all about you doing you because I'm going to fucking do me. and I'm gonna do me until I'm fucking dead. And I believe I earned the right. A lot of people haven't earned the right. Just because you live in this country, I mean, you earn the right. You gotta live. Live. And then have something to say, or shut the fuck up.
So if you had, it's maybe impossible to answer, but if you had that same kid from earlier, he wants to take that first step, you want him to go experience some life, what one specific thing would you tell him to go do?
I'd first ask the kid, who are you? At the core of your soul. And if he can't answer that question, our conversation's over. So I can't say shit to him. Right. If you don't know who you are, I can't tell you who you are.
What's the next phase of your life look like? You can't imagine how intrigued I am to watch you over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, honestly, I'm blessed enough to have survived the life I live and to come out the other side with a bunch of knowledge. So hopefully I can help people that believe that they're much less than what they truly are. Help them find greatness in themselves. And greatness isn't running 200 miles at a time or doing 4,000 pull-ups or being a SEAL. Greatness is whatever the hell you dreamed of in your own mind. You gotta first see it. You gotta first create this vision in your mind. And then that's when I come into play. Once you create this vision in your mind, it's how am I gonna get there now? And that's when I come into play. But first you gotta create your own vision. And it's not external. It's the vision created is inside of you. So until you create that, I'm nobody to you.
Are you writing a book?
I'm slowly writing a book right now. It's taking me 4 or 5 years because I have so many things to talk about. It's gonna be probably several books. But the first book will probably be about my life story, how I came up, and a few lessons learned along the way. But you know, I have so much to talk about, so much to say, just to give people a lot more than hope. So.
All right. Before my last question, where can these guys find you online?
DavidGoggins.com. You know, Instagram is David Goggins, or Facebook's David Goggins, @DavidGoggins. You know, you'll find me. Go on there, look for David Goggins. Google me.
They will find you. There's so much amazing stuff on you. All right, so last question. What is the impact that you want to have on the world?
The impact I want to have on the world is a great question, man, and it's a question that I've been asking many times. I have several answers for it. But the biggest one is we are all great. No matter if you think you're dumb, no matter if you think you're fat, no matter if you are fat, no matter if you've been bullied, or no matter if you just got back from Iraq or Afghanistan and you have no legs or your arms or whatever, man, we all have greatness. You gotta find the courage. You gotta find the courage to put your Bose headphones on and silence the noise out of this world and to find it. And to find it because it's out there, but it's gonna take hard work, courage, self-discipline. It's gonna take all the non-cognitive skills. All the non-cognitive skills to be great. You know, smart is good, all this stuff is good, that's all cognitive. It's the non-cognitive skills that set you apart from everybody else. And that's what it's all about.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. That was incredible. Guys, this is one of those times where as I was researching him, I literally felt like I should be doing this in a bucket of ice water or something. And I actually only mean that sort of tongue-in-cheek. I fasted through most of my prep because it felt right to put myself in a more difficult situation while I was doing that. It really makes me want to find more ways to go through hardship, and that's one of the things I really hope you guys take away from him is how you can totally create yourself. And I experienced him in reverse. So I saw all of the amazing things that he had done, all of the races that he had won, going through Hell Week 3 times, the succeeding in 3 different branches of the military, nobody ever doing that before, the pull-up record, all of it, and then found out that he had struggled through everything. And you realize how insidiously and how quietly the idea that somebody is just better than you, they're more genetically gifted than you, slips into your mind as a way of letting you off the hook. Not as a way of making them more extraordinary, but you make them extraordinary as a way of letting you off the hook. And so hearing all the things that he had to go through, and one thing that didn't even come up in the show, he did most of the amazing endurance stuff before he had his heart fixed. So his heart was literally existing at 60% capacity. He still did all of that. This is a man who peed blood and got up and kept running for 30 more miles. If that kind of thing doesn't inspire you to look inward and to really take control of your own story, to realize that you can sculpt yourself into anything you want, it doesn't have to be Goggins. But to see in that the power of both beauty and rage, to see in that the malleability of the human spirit, to see in that the power of the human spirit to turn you into anyone that you want to become, that is this man's story, and I hope that you guys heard it. There were so many incredible things, so many times that I got the chills, so many times that I saw another tool that I could take and use in my own life, and I hope you guys got that much out of it as I did. All right, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care. David, thank you so much.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Impact Theory. If this content is adding value to your life, our one ask is that you go to iTunes and Stitcher and rate and review. Not only does that help us build this community, which at the end of the day is all we care about, but it also helps us get even more amazing guests on here to share their knowledge with all of us. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this community. And until next time, be legendary, my friends.
Often the advice I give to people today is fast forward where you are, look at yourself in 10, 15, 20 years time and ask yourself the question, is that where I want to be? And if the answer is no, then you need to find a new path to just get to understand yourself. You don't know what you need in your life until you figure out who you are.
Hey everybody, welcome to Impact Theory. You are here, my friends, because you believe that human potential is nearly limitless, but you know that having potential is not the same as actually doing something with it. So our goal with this show and company is to introduce you to the people and ideas that will help you actually execute on your dreams. All right, today's guest is a former monk whose wisdom has truly gone viral. After finishing business school, he turned down lucrative offers from prestigious companies, shaved his head, and hit the road. For 3 years, he traveled across India, Europe, and England, living as a monk, studying, meditating, and building food and shelter programs for those in need. He was definitely in love with what he was doing, but he knew that it didn't scale. So, driven by a desire to share what he was learning with as many people as possible, he re-engaged with the world and dove headfirst into learning about the tools and techniques that might allow knowledge to spread as fast as entertainment. And to that end, he joined Accenture, helping them build their digital division while learning about the forces shaping the new digital landscape. He learned fast and quickly became their #1 social media influencer in a company of 400,000 people. Along the way, he also helped advise over 150 executives on their personal brands, allowing him a very broad base with which to test his theories. And leveraging what he learned, in 2016, he launched his own Facebook page, and it exploded. In less than 12 months, his inspiring, entertaining, and highly useful videos garnered over 1 billion views, and now he has north of 2.5 million followers globally. He makes content not only for his own pages, but for places like the Huffington Post, and he has interviewed such luminaries as Tim Ferriss, Simon Sinek, Dr. Shefali, Deepak Chopra, and countless others. In the wake of his ridiculous level of success as both a content creator and digital strategist, he was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2017. The Asian Media Awards named his blog Best Blog in 2016, and he was added to National Geographic's Chasing Genius Council, for which he is now helping to source solutions to some of the world's greatest challenges. So please, help me in welcoming the urban monk himself, the man who is proving that you really can scale impact, Jay Shetty.
Pleasure to see you.
Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, truly an
Grateful.
honor. Oh, man.
Thank you,
It
man.
goes both ways. So, as I was telling you before we started rolling, in my research, like, I normally just go watch all the interviews that people have done, and I've come across you like a million times in researching other people. So I thought, oh, this will be the easiest thing ever. Like, this guy will have been interviewed 100 times. And you haven't. Like, it's insane to me. Like, you're pumping out so much content, nobody's nabbed you up yet. So this is going to be really fun to really go deep. Your ideas are clearly very well thought through, so it should be a lot of fun.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I'm patient.
Yes.
Patient of having the right interviews, the right time, being with the right people, having it be framed correctly. So I'm very honored to be here. I'm a huge fan of the show.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I want to talk about, obviously, having lived in London, knowing a little bit about what it's like to grow up as an Indian kid in England, how on earth did you buck the trend of, you once said, growing up in an Indian household, you're either a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So how'd you not fall prey to that?
Yeah, those were my 3 options, right? That was it. There was no 4th option. So according to my parents, family, or the community I grew up in, I'm a failure.
That's crazy.
And how did I buck the trend? I was really, really fortunate that very early on I started to experiment with what mattered to me. Sometimes that got me in a lot of trouble. What people don't know about me is that I was suspended from school 3 times for trying out all sorts of things, like things that people would never imagine of someone who goes on to be a monk. I was experimenting with all the drugs in the world. I had multiple relationships. I was really trying to search for some sort of meaning, fulfillment, and as long as I've known, I've been chasing thrill. I really value thrill and feeling like
I did not see that coming.
Yeah, no, not many people do. It's very different. From 14 to 18, I was like this kid who just wanted to try new things out. And my parents' rhetoric would always be, well, make sure you get good grades. And I used to think, well, if I can be bad and get good grades, then it all works, right? Everyone's happy. So that's kind of what I did. And at 18, I was really fortunate when I met a monk. And this monk was invited to speak. And I kind of just went because one of my friends forced me to. At that time, I was listening to CEOs and entrepreneurs and business people and marketers who I thought that's what I was aspiring to be like. And then I hear this monk. And he captivated me like no one had ever captivated me before. It was like staring at the most beautiful woman on the planet. You know, I was completely fixated on him and his message. And that is the beginning, without me going into too much detail before we probe, that was the beginning of what changed me. Because I went from being someone who did only want all those things to become successful and trying to, but I started hearing my own inner voice much more in all that noise that I had around me. I remember one of my parents had a maths tutor for me because they wanted to be amazing at maths. And I was pretty good at numbers, and I'd have this tutor and he'd tell me that. He goes, the reason that you're struggling with the next question is because you're always worried about what your parents think. And that really stayed in my head. I was just like, wow, so as long as I'm trapped by what my parents think, I can actually never find the answers to the real questions of life. And there were all these little things happening. I lost 2 great friends when I was 16. One girl died in a car accident. One guy died because he was involved in drugs and violence. That made me rethink everything. I just thought to myself, wait a minute, these were beautiful people, people that I loved, people that, in my opinion, were good people. And I just lost them in a moment. And it was kind of like this collation of little things that just made me think, wait a minute, having money, having fame, that just doesn't seem to add up. And then meeting the monk kind of made that shift possible. And as I said, he was completely captivating. And then I found out that he'd given up jobs in Google and Microsoft to be a monk. And I thought to myself, who does that? You know, he's given up everything that I'm chasing and that all my friends are chasing, but he seems happier than anyone I've ever met before. And he spoke about this incredible principle where he said that we should plant trees under whose shade we do not plan to sit. And he was speaking about this principle of selfless sacrifice. And that kind of just penetrated me right there. When he said the words selfless sacrifice, for the first time in my life, I felt a thrill about something that I'd never felt before. I thought, wow, giving up everything you have for the service of others sounds like the best thing you can possibly do. And I don't know why I had that thought, because I wasn't a spiritual kid growing up. I wasn't a religious kid growing up. I wasn't even a good kid growing up. I was just a rebel, a misfit, trying things out, an experimenter, which I still consider myself. And so what I started to do is I was interning at companies and firms and corporates, thinking I was getting a grad job afterwards. And then I'd spend the rest of my summer holidays interning in India, living with him as a monk. So I'd use all my summer and Christmas holidays to just be out there with the monks. And he introduced me to another 200 to 500 monks that were just like him, just as smart, just as bright, giving up everything they had and using all their skills to make the world a better place.
I want to go back
Yeah.
to why that resonated with you, which is really surprising. So, and maybe you're just, you know, so far ahead of where I was at the time, but that would have sounded absurd to me at that time.
Yeah.
Did you already have a sense of unease that like I'm a rebel without a cause, or like, what was it about that moment? And you seem very aware of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that some of that awareness was present then. Like, what was that moment?
I believe the moment was I've always had friends who are older than me. And I could see a lot of them in the most successful careers, successful jobs, beautiful partners, whatever it was. But I saw a sense of lack of fulfillment, meaning, and purpose in their lives. And I've always been an observer, and I would see these people who are like 5 years older than me, 7 years older than me, maybe 10 years older than me. And I'd be watching them and go, is that the life I want? And often the advice I give to people today is fast forward where you are, look at yourself in 10, 15, 20 years' time, and ask yourself the question, is that where I want to be? If you're in a company, look at the person who's 20 years ahead of you and ask yourself, is that where I want to be? If you're in a startup, look at where other startups have got to in similar roles and go, is that where I want to be? And if the answer is no, then you need to find a new path. And for me, the answer at that time from observing was no. The path that my parents or society or the university I went to or the community I had that was carving out for me, it didn't feel like the path for me. So I was almost seeking an alternative or a new path. I was just so fortunate that it happened to be an uplifting, powerful path as opposed to something that could have actually taken me down the wrong road, because that could have been possible too.
So walk me through the first time you step off the plane in India. It's summer.
And so I'm living there, I'm waking up. I'm almost doing all the practices, just as if you were shadowing a CEO. I'm just shadowing a monk. And so I'm just shadowing his lifestyle. So we wake up, he's like one of the most elite monks. So we're waking up at like 2 a.m. every day after sleeping at like 9 or 10 p.m. And then we study these ancient Vedas, which are 5,000 plus years old, together. And we spend 2 hours. I'm studying with the best of the best here. So he can like analyze and assimilate, and I'm learning fast, taking notes. Then 4 a.m. we go to collective meditation. We do those practices with the other monks as well. 6 a.m. we have personal meditation. So I'm literally going through the life of a monk and falling in love with it step by step, going, wow, I've never had this experience before. I just threw myself in, and I was practicing it to the T, right? It wasn't like, oh no, my back hurts when I sit on the floor, I can't stay here for too long, or you know, today when people are like, oh, I can't meditate for longer than 2 minutes, I was like, no, I'm gonna do it for 2 hours. If that's what they're doing, I'm gonna give it a go. Because I can only test, the hypothesis will only be true if the experiment is carried out to the degree that they are. So if the hypothesis is, if you live like this, you'll be happy, more fulfilled, then I wanna do that.
All right, so let's explore this then through the lens of creating one's own perfect life.
Yes.
Which is pretty interesting, especially because, interesting because I think this is so accurate to the way that most people are. It's not like, oh, there's some grand missing thing in my life, but you took that first action. So codify this for me, or for anybody that wants, they don't know what their ideal life looks like, they just know that they're not living it yet. So step number one is take it seriously. To find out if the hypothesis is true or not, you have to take the experiment, you have to do it sincerely. What comes after that?
I think even one step before that is opening yourself up to new role models and new experiences. See, we live in echo chambers. We're just surrounded by the same thinking. How often do you bump into a monk? You know, it just doesn't happen. You don't have, no one has a dinner party and goes, oh yeah, we just invited the monk, you know, from town, like the local monk. Like no one ever does that. And so we meet people who are just like us most of the time. And we talk about this in business all the time. If you want to be a billionaire, spend time with billionaires. If you want to be a millionaire, spend time with millionaires. If you want to be a tech startup, spend time with, you know, that's the common rhetoric that we hear all the time. But what if you want to find purpose and master the mind? There's no one better than a monk who's mastered the mind. So for me, the first step is just opening yourself up to new experiences and new role models. Because most of us can't see ourselves in people, so then we try and fit ourselves into the boxes that we do see. And I mean, there's this beautiful quote that I've been saying it everywhere, and I wish I wrote it, but I didn't. So it's by a philosopher and writer named Cooley. And he said that today, I'm not what I think I am I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. And just let that blow your mind for a moment. It's so powerful. I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. So we live in this perception of a perception of ourselves. Hence, my identity is made by what my parents think I should be. My identity is made up by what my college or university thinks I should achieve. While you're living in that bubble and that echo chamber, getting to what you really want to do is impossible, because maybe that just doesn't fit. And I think so many people feel that way today, that they don't fit into the current education system. They don't fit with the 3 or 4 or 5 careers that you're taught exist. So that process of self-excavation and actualization first requires being exposed. You can't be what you can't see. If I never saw a monk, I would never have wanted to be a monk. If I never meet a billionaire, I wouldn't want to be one, because I wouldn't know what that feels like. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it takes. And I think that's the biggest challenge of our society, that we're not exposed. So that's the first step, being exposed to unique experiences and role models. Second step is finding that experience or role model that you're passionate about, and exactly like you said, taking it seriously. Shadow them, network with them, spend time with them, observe them, even from afar. It takes that observation, being addicted to observing that person's lifestyle. And then the third step is going yes or no. Does that work for me? Not everyone who's going to go off and become a monk is going to feel like the way I did, and that's cool. But not everyone is going to go and follow and shadow a billionaire and go, that's exactly the lifestyle I want. They may want the result, but do they want the hard work that goes with it? And so for me, that's the third step. It's observing, focusing, shadowing, getting as close to the process of that individual, and then going yes or no. Do I want that process? Not do I want the result? Everyone wants to be that monk who's fully enlightened, you know, can walk through, has an incredible aura that people just gravitate towards. But when you realize he has to wake up at 2 a.m. every day and sleep about 4 to 6 hours, you're like, you know, I don't want to do it. that doesn't sound like me. Yeah.
All right, so a couple things. One, you said he's as powerful as he is.
Yeah.
Define power for me.
Power being, so from a monk's perspective, the greatest power is to be self-controlled. To be able to train the mind and energy to focus it exactly where you want it and when you want it to be. You are completely detached and undeterred from external ups and downs. You're able to navigate anything that seems tough, challenging, fun, excitement, with the same amount of being equipoised and balanced and equanimity, without being too excited in pleasure or being too depressed in pain. But knowing how to navigate every situation, to me, that's great strength and great power.
I heard in one of your talks you were saying that if you look at a literal lifeline, a heartbeat, for instance, you know, it's up and it's down, and people have this sense that something like enlightenment would be that the equanimity forever and just an even keel. And you said, but what does that resemble? It resembles a flat line when you die.
Correct.
So what is it like? What I love about you is you sort of went into the wilderness of being a monk, but you brought it back to the real world. Because when you talk about a monk, you talk about them being detached, and that to me seems like the only real way to have that sort of super even keel existence, which is not appealing to me personally. So if you're bringing back that notion of power, of having control over yourself, not letting your emotions take you everywhere, but knowing that life is the series of ups and downs, what does that power look like when it's brought back?
Absolutely, and actually that's the whole aim of monk training. It's more like a training system than it is a lifelong commitment. It is bringing that mindset into the real world where you get to test it. Now, I got to do that for real when I left being a monk around 5 years ago. And when I left, it was like, oh my God, I'm in the real world now again. Real world. I have to think about how to apply all this. I'm gonna test for real all this stuff that I've learned. And I was scared. Like, I was nervous, I was anxious, and all those things that I've been trained not to be rushed back. Because for the first time in my life, I had to really put it into practice. And I love that feeling. I'm so glad that I had to do that. So for me, actually, the mindset is completely trainable to bring it into the real world. That's what I'm trying to do. And what it allows you to do is, it allows you to gain clarity and perspective when you need it. Because you know when you can just take a bird's eye view from something. You know when you need to get close into something. You know when you need to pull back from something. There's a beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita that says that detachment is not that you own nothing. Detachment is that nothing owns you. And I love it, because to me that summarizes detachment in a way that it's not usually explained. Usually people see detachment as being away from everything. Actually, the greatest detachment is being close to everything and not letting it consume and own you. And that's real power, that's real strength. How many people do we know that have had fame and then that fame has ruined them? So for me, that definition of detachment is possible to practice even in the real world, rather than saying, oh, I'm just gonna have a really simple life, I'm just gonna have nothing in life.
What was the best part about being a monk?
The best part about being a monk is that your morning routine and practices are so powerful that you can actually aspire for more incredible values in life.
Because your mind is clear.
Because your mind is clear. And you have that ability to have more clarity so you can seek that which is higher. So I'll give an example of what I mean.
Define,
Yeah.
Is that what you're about to define?
Yeah.
What is higher?
Yes, exactly. So for me, being able to overcome ego, being able to overcome envy, being able to overcome jealousy, being able to overcome the negative of competitive state. There's a positive competitive state and there's a negative competitive state. Today, when people are looking on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, all you're looking at is, oh, she got that many likes, or he got that many likes, she got engaged, or he got married, or, oh my God, look at her body, or look at that. And it's like, that stuff's destroying us inside. Envy, jealousy, ego, greed. To be able to have enough clarity to purify yourself of those things is gonna alleviate the biggest anxieties and depressions of our time and mental health problems. And we know that. We know that because all the mental health research today suggests that things like isolation, overexposure, we now can have more pain consumption in one day because of what we're exposed to than the pain we would have had in a lifetime. That's huge. Like that's ridiculous to think that in one day, because of the media, news, and social media, we consume more negative than we did in a lifetime. For me, being able to have time, energy, and clarity to focus on self-purification, that is the best thing about being a monk. Because you have that time, reflection, and a process, and an environment that only allows you to become more purified of those things.
So, if I was the interviewer that I wanted to be, I would have asked you this question when we were on the topic, but I'm going to go back just because it's important enough. You gave us the 3 ways that you can really construct your ideal life, but define an ideal life for me.
So an ideal life for me is a life, and this applies to a company, an organization, an institution for me, is an ideal life is when we all have a head, a heart, and a hand, all 3 elements together, working in alignment. Without one or the other, we start to lose something. If you only have a head and a heart, you'll find that life is stable.
And define each of those.
Yeah, sure. So a head is the clarity of vision.
What you want.
What you want. Knowing what you want, the way you picture life, and being able to navigate and make the decisions to get there. That's a good head. A good heart is being able to understand what your intuition and heart wants, being able to connect and tap into that understanding deeper and beyond the vision you may have painted for yourself. So I often say to people that you'll get to where you want in life, just not in the way you imagined. And that's because the path that's paved up and down is far different to the path we paved. So you can have a great head and a great vision and a great mission and know where you want to go, but if your heart's not able to have that resilience and be able to adapt and have compassion and care and all of that, then you're not going to be able to make the toughest decisions without your heart. But to be able to realize that we need to care and be sustainable and long-lasting requires a heart. And a hand is that service, wanting to pass that on, that which you have, wanting to give it forward, pay it forward. The idea of serving with what you have. I often say to people, your passion is for you, your purpose is for others. Your passion makes you happy, but when you use your passion to make a difference in someone else's life, that's a service, that's a purpose, and that's the hand. So those are my 3 elements of an ideal life.
I like that a lot. And I when you first said it, and I'm glad you defined it, because when you first said it, I thought the heart was going to be the part about, like, you know, just compassion and caring for others, doing something for other people. But I like that, the hand being tied to service. So one thing that I think a lot about is deep fulfillment. Like, really, when I think about, okay, what is a life worth living? Honestly, it comes down to neurochemistry for me. And it comes down to experiencing this world in a way that optimizes for sustainable pleasure, which I'll differentiate between a bowl of ice cream, a bump of cocaine. Those are pleasurable.
Absolutely.
And I haven't done the cocaine, but the ice cream I can speak for.
Okay, I've done both.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'll trust that it holds up. But they don't bring a lasting fulfillment. It's not sustainable, right? So both of them end up creating this self-destructive loop. And purpose really does become that thing that gives you something that is, on a neurochemical level, deeply satisfying.
Absolutely.
And how much of this, like, how did you marry the deeply spiritual, the often abstract? Oftentimes I'll hear spiritual speakers talk and I feel them sort of drifting off into the ether. How did you marry that to experimentation, neuroscience, practicality? Like, one, why do you find that interesting? And then two, what are you doing with that?
So I studied behavioral science at university, so I've always been fascinated by why people do what they do. And whenever I was reading these books that are 5,000 years old, my greatest fascination was finding a principle and finding its relevance in modern science. And I said to myself, the day I can't find that, I'll quit. I won't believe in this anymore. So I'm still doing that, and I'm ready to quit. If someone shows me a piece of science and I can't find a principle in these ancient literatures, or actually what I like to call these timeless literatures, then I'll give up my faith, because for me, it has to track forward. And I'll give you a really basic example. Today we're in the gratitude movement. There's like 1 million gratitude journals out there. There's 1 million scientific studies on gratitude, and gratitude has been linked to better mental health, self-awareness, better relationships. I mean, there's so many scientific studies on the neuro level that shows that gratitude is great for your mind, brain, and fulfillment. Now, I look back, like, gratitude is all over the timeless wisdom. One of the first things we were trained to do when we were a monk was to pay our respects to the earth for what it gives us. And you do that first thing in the morning. What is that, if not gratitude? When you wake up in the morning, you thank the earth for the food, you thank the earth for the water, you thank the earth for allowing yourself to walk. You start your day with gratitude. Today, the biggest tip on Forbes and Inc. and everything is start your day with gratitude. Like, where does it come from? It's right there. These things are old. So I get fascinated, I'm intrigued by the parallels and patterns because it saves you time. It's the same way as which if I say that this business person got invested by this company and that's why they're successful because they had the right investors, etc. That's a pattern. So I know if I'm building a business in that area, I'm going to look for investors like that. It's the same thing. That pattern saves you time rather than you trying to figure out, does gratitude work? How shall I be grateful? Creating your own process almost.
It's really interesting. Life has taught me to stop believing everything I think. And the way that it's taught me that is by relentlessly punishing me every time I overinvest in being right. And I remember when my wife and I first got together, she used to get chest infections all the time. And she told me it's because of the AC. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. And she was like, no, my grandmother used to just swear up and down, if you're hot and you stand in front of a fan, that you're gonna get sick. And I was like, that is the biggest load of like crap I've ever heard in my life. That does not make sense. Like, getting sick comes from either bacteria or virus. Like, it's that simple. And she was like, I'm just saying this, my grandma always said, and it seems true to me. And I was just like, oh God, this is exhausting. And then one time, I went to a doctor and I was like, yeah, and my wife is crazy and thinks that when you're hot, if you stand in front of the AC, it'll make you sick. And he goes, oh yeah, she's right. And I was like, hold on. And he was like, well, she's sort of right. He's like, this is what's happening. You have a mucus layer membrane in your throat it keeps it moist, keeps germs from being able to break through the barrier, and so they get trapped, they go to your stomach, they're killed by the acid or whatever. And he said, but if you get a crack in that, then the bacteria or virus can actually get into your bloodstream, and that's how you get sick. And it's just drying her throat out. And I was like, whoa. And it was one of those moments where I was like, how many wives' tales are true? Like, directionally. They're not accurate, but they're true, if
Yes.
you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And so that's how I think when you think of a book that's lasted as long as it has, and I know you and I, we've never talked about this, but we share a real fascination for storytelling.
Yes.
Because it's a way to convey an idea that resonates emotionally and allows people to carry it on and pass it on. And obviously this all starts long before we have science and can prove any of this, but we see the patterns. We need a way to encapsulate the pattern. We encapsulate it in a story. The story is in and of itself totally fake. But now in a modern context, we're getting lost in that the story is fake, even though the take-home message is incredibly powerful.
Yes.
And so as I mean, it's the classic story, right? The more you learn, the less you realize you know. And just as I've gotten older and really started to understand this stuff and read as much as I do, and quite frankly, live and suffer and go through things, like my wife having microbiome issues, and at first thinking all of her descriptions make absolutely no sense, and then you stop passing a judgment on it and start saying, what if everything she's saying is actually true? Like how would we treat it then, right?
Absolutely.
And so there is something really fascinating there. Now I find myself, I'm way more emotionally drawn to the science, because when I can picture it, I have a much easier time doing something about it. So when you were talking about the things that you learned from meditation, I've gotten tremendous value out of meditation, just nothing like what you've learned. So for me it was, once I understood that diaphragm breathing made sense because it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, then because I understood it, the understanding becomes a force multiplier.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about behavioral science, self-awareness, watching your content, which, have you ever looked at how much content you've put out?
No.
It's a lot, dude. Like when you search your name, like to go, because I normally try to watch like basically everything, and I was like, I give up. Like, it's really incredible. And going through that stuff, it seems really clear to me that you have massive self-awareness. And what would you say, like, is there a process for people to gain more self-awareness? And then what are, from a behavioral, just human behavior level, what are things that trip up the average person?
The first answer, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the book Thinking Fast and Slow. I don't know if you've read it. Yeah, it's a great book, because for me it's got a really close pattern connection again to what I studied. So just understanding System 1 and System 2, if anyone watching hasn't read it, I highly recommend it. Just being able to differentiate between System 1 and System 2, as Daniel Kahneman calls it, in the Vedic philosophy would be called differentiating between the mind and the intelligence. Knowing how to differentiate the voices in your head is the first level of self-awareness.
So break down what System 1 and System 2 are.
Absolutely. So System 1 is your initial response to anything that happens. It's a stop that I can't really say. So if you say something I don't like, my System 1 naturally would be a face that I pull that I'm like, I don't agree with that. That's the understanding of what System 1 is. It's your initial default reaction in the moment. That can be positive often. For example, if someone pulls out a knife, you feel scared and you run. That's System 1. That's a good thing. It's safe for you. But also System 1 is someone says something that hurts your ego and you start defending yourself immediately. That's a negative of System 1. That we would refer to as the mind. It's built up of conditioning. Those responses are conditioned. Those default elements are all there because of habit and continuous practice. The System 2 is more like the intelligence. What I would say is more like the parent. If you can consider System 1 to be more like a child, System 2 is more like a parent. It looks more at the long term. It looks more at the bigger picture. It processes that default reaction through a set of checking and metrics to decide whether that's true. The child is the one that wants everything right away, impatient, quickly responding, straight away reacting when it doesn't get what it wants. The intelligent parent, a good one, knows what the child wants and needs and what's better for it in the long term. Just starting there and being able to reflect and observe the different voices inside of us is a great place to start your self-awareness. Because the biggest challenge is that most of us don't know what we're listening to. And most of us don't even know that there are more than one voice inside of us. Just getting over that line is a huge win. Because now at least you're trying to differentiate in what you're hearing. And that's going to help you make better decisions in the future. So that was answer 1. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
And second one was?
So that's awareness.
Yeah.
What are like typical things that trip people up so in your answer just now, it's like, okay, if you want to become more aware, just know that those two things are happening, right? You're going to have an initial response and then one that's more calculated. Now, be aware of these 2 or 3 things that are also coming for you.
The biggest challenge is that there's just so much noise. It's like, have you ever had someone in your home, maybe it's your wife or maybe it's a friend or whatever, just play a really bad song too often? Right, just playing a song that you really don't like.
I actually heard my wife laugh because she knows how guilty she is.
Right, okay, there you go, right? There you go. And you just play a song and you just think, oh, turn that off. And after a while, it's been on for so long that you become immune to it. Like it's just there and it's still on. It's there in the back of your mind and you didn't manage to turn it off. So the noise that I describe in life, whether it's your parents' expectations, whether it's society's expectations, whether it's your partner's expectations, all of those are like noise in the background. And that noise drowns out your ability to understand the mind and the intelligence. That's one of the biggest trip-ups. I gave a presentation called Build a Life, Not a Resume. It's also one of my popular videos. But
very good video.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. And when I did the research, so you don't see this in the video because this research didn't make it into the video. But the research that I was doing was around the most common resume lies. The truth is, over 40 to 50% of us lie on our resumes.
Yeah, if you don't, you're missing an opportunity. I'll just say that.
Yeah, there you go, right? So, and I started to dig deeper, and I was looking at, a lot of people lie about their dates of employment. So instead of 3 days, it's now 3 months, whatever it may be. Now, I dug deeper, and I wanted to meet some of these people and speak to people. And so I spoke to people who lie on their resumes, and we know that at least 40 to 50% tell us they do. Well, the thing is, no one was proud of that. No one was like, yeah, I know I'm gonna get. Really what it came down to is we're really insecure about our own abilities. Really what it came down to is we're not confident about what we have to offer. What it came down to is a lack of self-awareness. What it came down to is a lack of understanding. What am I good at? What am I passionate about? What am I bringing to the table? That's what people were really worried about. They were worried about the job, but when you dug beneath the surface, the real behavioral trait that was coming out was insecurity and being unconfident about one's potential. That tells us a lot. That indicates a lot about human behavior and human nature. That the noise from outside makes us want to fit into a container. And that stops us from differentiating between what is my mind saying and what is my intelligence saying. And what happens is that noise becomes your voice. So that noise becomes what you think is what you're saying. And most people don't realize that until 10, 20, 30 years down the line.
How the hell do you figure out, so your analogy is great. So the song's on, you don't even realize it's there anymore, it becomes total white noise, you're oblivious to it. In fact, you'll only notice it if it gets turned off.
Correct.
So how do they identify that? Like, do you have a process for that? How do you hear the thing that you no longer hear so that you can shut it off?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest ones, and we say this all the time, but it applies mostly to this, is switching your association. Is switching
association to
the
what?
people that you hang out with,
okay.
right? It's like changing your circle. Because if you're only hearing the same thing from that circle, the only way to turn it off without you having to do mass amounts of reflection is changing your circle, where you start hearing. We all ultimately find the things we want to hear, right? We know that.
All right, right now in real time, you and I are going to do some cool shit. You
okay,
ready?
let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, so I created like a little piece of content for Alexa where I was like, okay, what are the 4 questions that you can ask to get, because you and I use different words, but I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So I call them invisible beliefs.
Beautiful.
So everybody has invisible beliefs and they're totally fucking with you.
Yeah, I call it noise. Yeah.
So they're controlling your life. And the only way to get them to stop controlling your life is actually figure out what they are. And so I gave 4 questions that 2 of them I just straight stole from Albert Einstein.
What are they?
And it's the most important decision every person will make in their life is whether they live in a friendly or a hostile universe. So just make it a question, right? Do you live in a friendly or a hostile universe? And so the point, and I'll go through all 4, but the point was that if you ask these 4 questions, and they're just the tip of the iceberg, but if you ask these 4 questions, you're going to begin to identify your frame of reference. Basically just trying to get people to frame themselves as either optimistic or pessimistic, which I think is sort of the big ham-handed, like, first thing you need to become aware of. So first, do you live in a hostile or friendly universe? Another Einstein one. Is everything a miracle or is nothing a miracle, right? Because you get to choose.
Absolutely.
So neither one of those is objectively real, but you pick and it's really going to color how you see
I love it. Yeah.
And then number 3, can you do anything you set your mind to without limitation, or are there certain things you can't comprehend? And then number 4, I'm forgetting right now, so I won't waste time, because you get the...
Yeah, I get it. I love them. They're brilliant. Brilliant questions.
So what, like, they're woefully incomplete. So what could we add to that that would really bring this home for people? So if that gets them optimistic, pessimistic, what other, at a really high level,
yeah, sure,
what are other things that people could immediately switch, or in fact would immediately switch if they change, the people that they're hanging around? But like, let's really get real about what some of those things are. So optimism, pessimism, what else?
So for me, there was 2 questions that I had to ask myself that really changed what I do. One of my big questions is, what advice would I give to my younger self? It's huge, because I think that's the stuff that we regret. That's the stuff that we wish we were doing. That's the stuff that has been lost in the noise. When you ask someone, what advice would you give to your younger self? The number 1 answer is, I wish I studied this. I wish I tried this out. I wish I gave this a go. Those are the...
All things that somebody didn't do?
Yeah, it's all things people didn't do. It's always like something that either should have started or didn't continue. And that's really tapping into someone's voice, right? That's really tapping into what someone really wants to do. And you're going way beyond just like, oh, what do you like? What are you passionate about? So hard to answer that sometimes, especially if you're drowning. Does that add to your questions or not?
No, it's really interesting, but now I need to know what your answer was.
So I used to do a lot of spoken word when I grew up. I read the dictionary, I read the thesaurus, I loved language. That's what I was fascinated by. And for some reason I gave it up. Then I found out about monk life, became a monk, and then almost back 10 years on at 28, I asked myself that question, and my answer was, I miss words. I miss expressiveness. I miss sharing a message and stories through incredible language and ideas, potential rhymes, but flow and all of these things. So that was the answer to my question. One of the biggest answers was, I wish I never stopped writing.
When did you ask that question?
I was actually 28,
so
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, man. I will tell you right now that your content is like the modern version of spoken word. So I don't know if that's on purpose or an accident, but like...
It was an accident.
Watching it, I was like, fuck. Like, if he is doing this off the cuff, I have to hate myself a little.
Yeah.
And if he's writing it down, he performs it so well that it feels off the cuff. But
the answer's birth.
Very impressive.
Thank you, man. You're so kind. I'm genuinely touched coming from you.
No, here's the thing. Like, look, and I love giving compliments when they're real, but more importantly, you compliment the thing that you want to reinforce in somebody. So you've got a mission, I find it very interesting, which is, can we make knowledge, my word, I don't remember what word you used.
Wisdom.
Wisdom, perfect. So can we make wisdom spread as far and as fast as entertainment, which is so similar to what I'm trying to change people's beliefs through entertainment. So I recognized the kindred soul right away. And then just watching the content, I'm like, whoa, like I'm not surprised the number of views that you've gotten, because songs work because they make you feel an emotion, but they also tap into whatever it is about humans, whatever it is that we convey through rhythm. And before the cameras were rolling, we were talking about it. So the one thing that makes me very uncomfortable, I do this thing called impact quotes. And impact quotes is the first time where I allowed myself to perform, where I would not say it like this if you and I were standing next to each other, right? This is for the camera. I know how it's going to be edited. I know we're going to add music to it. So it is a performance. But it's also some of our best performing content. So it's like what you were saying earlier about, look, I just accept that not everybody geeks out on neuroscience. And so I have to understand like who my audience is and give them something in a way that will then resonate and go viral.
Absolutely.
And so I think acknowledging that's really interesting. So anyway, I'm responding just to what you were saying about that, because your life seems to be an echo of that answer. All right, so there's a few more things I have to get to.
Go for it. I'm here. I'm loving this. And if you're loving it, that's even better.
Yeah, 100%. So there are 3 questions that you get asked a lot. What are they?
Ooh, the big one is, how do I find my passion?
Okay, and you can tell me I need you to answer each one of them.
Yeah.
But if you want to run through what each of the questions are, and then we'll go back. Or...
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll just do them as they are.
Perfect.
So how do I find my passion? My simple model, which is the Dharma model. Dharma means eternal duty in the Vedic tradition. It's very similar to what Ikigai is being spoken about today, which is the Japanese version of reason for being. Why do we live? Where is meaning coming from? And it talks about an intersect of 4 areas. What am I good at? What do I love? What does the world need? And how do I get paid for it? To me, those four help you unlock your passion. When you find the intersect across all of those four, you're making your passion your purpose. You'll unlock your passion, you'll find your purpose. This is path one. There's two paths. Path one, I find my skill set and I engage it to help other people and become better at it. So I'm becoming better at what I'm good at and I'm using it to help other people because I'm aware of what I'm quite good at and I know what knowledge I have, what skills I have. I have some self-awareness. The other path that people often miss is actually I just start serving people. I just start helping people and I start to notice what I enjoy about that and what I'm good at helping people with. So that's Gandhi's part. Gandhi said that you find yourself when you lose yourself in the service of others. So for me, those are the two paths of how do I find my passion and finding the intersect between those four areas.
Love that.
And the second one is, Jay, my relationship's falling apart. I get asked that all the time. So the answer to that is much harder. It's harder to summarize it, but I always start with self-actualization, that the problem is we have a list for the one that we want, and we don't have a list for what we need to become. And I don't mean become to attract, I mean become to just be, to just get to understand yourself. You don't know what you need in your life until you figure out who you are. And so I find too many people rush into relationships without really recognizing and being fully aware of what they need from a relationship. So it all comes back to how aware are you, how much understanding do you have of yourself and what you need and what you want. That's my best advice for a relationship in like a minute. And then the third question I mostly get asked is, Jay, what do you read? Like, what are your favorite books? Because it seems you read a lot. What are your top 3 books? They're not groundbreaking in the sense that people may not be like, oh my God, that's the best book I've ever read. For me, they changed my life. So that's where I'm coming at it point from. I love Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And not because I applied it to businesses, because I applied it to my life. And even today, I'm constantly refining my why. That's all I do every day. My deepest morning routine and practice is to refine why I do what I do. It's so easy for me to now do it for money. It's so easy for me to now do it for followers. It's so easy for me to now do it for fame. And every day I have to refine that because I know, having lived as a monk and what I practice, that if those become what I want, then I'll forget who I need to be. So my daily practice and my daily routine is refining my intention, which in modern language is why. So for me, Simon's book helped me do that. The Bhagavad Gita, which I would love to do for Vedic knowledge, what Ryan's done for Stoicism. And the Bhagavad Gita, over 5,000 years old. And that book really exemplifies human challenge. Third book, I'd say this one's going to be hard because it's the last one. Let me think. I'm going to try throw something else in there. So I've done one like self-development, one more spiritual enlightenment. Let me throw a business book in, seeing as I'm sure you have a lot of business viewers. I love the book Exponential Organizations. I don't know if you read it. It's by Salim Ismail and the Singularity University. And that book, for me, is an incredible analysis of the success of all the organizations we see ruling our phone today. The way it breaks down their business models and how they were created, to me, it's fascinating. So if anyone really wants to start up an exponential business today, then that's where they have to go. And that's when Peter Diamandis said that if you want to be a billionaire, redefining it as someone who impacts the lives of 1 billion people. And that's what that business book is really about, is how do you create an exponential organization that positively impacts 1 billion people. So those are my 3 for today.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So.
All right, I've got one more thing that I want to hear you talk about, which are your 3 E's.
Ooh.
What are they? Why do they matter?
So for me, my 3 E's are element, environment, and energy. Everyone has an element that they thrive in. If you take someone out of their element, they won't be the same. A modern day example would be Michael Jordan. He was incredible at basketball. You took him out of basketball, put him into baseball, no one remembers his career. We're talking about one of the best athletes of all time. Your environment is the environment around you. You can take a fish out of water and give it a beautiful mansion and a Bentley and all the money in the world, but it will die. And that's what we are, like our environment. Everyone needs an environment which they thrive, which we have to craft. Your boss, if you're at work, is never gonna ask you, hey, what environment do you succeed in, right? Like, that never happens. So we have to create an environment where we thrive. And then finally, it's energy. Some of us love high energy environments, high pressure. Some of us succeed in low energy environments and low pressure. Figuring out your energy and the frequency on which you operate best will help you thrive as well. So for me, those are the 3 E's to really create a thriving environment. Know your element, know your environment, and know your energy. And so at all times, if I see anything going wrong, I'm going, is my element out of alignment? Is my environment out of alignment? Or is my energy out of alignment? And that's a great 3-question test you can do to yourself when you don't think things are going right. And all you have to do is bring that back into alignment.
Yeah, I love that. All right, before I ask my last question, where can these guys find you online?
Absolutely, you can find me, my favorite place for you to find me if you see the most stuff is Facebook. I'm Jay Shetty. On Instagram, I'm Jay Shetty as well. Those are my two best places. YouTube as well, Jay Shetty. Twitter, Jay Shetty. So it's just, yeah, it's Jay Shetty on any platform that you're on. I'm probably there.
Awesome. All right, what's the impact that you want to have on the world?
I think you've said it so beautifully so many times and shared my vision, which is wonderful. And it's wonderful to know that we share the same thing. It's making wisdom go viral. There's an incredible study in 2017 that said the most successful people in the world, healthy, wealthy, and wise, choose education over entertainment. The impact I want to have on the world is I want to transform and revolutionize the entertainment industry so that it becomes educational without anyone knowing. So it's still completely entertaining. It's still like watching Netflix. But you're learning about human behavior, the mind, neuroscience, and everything without even knowing you are. To me, that's the greatest win that we can have for our society. How many people are going to quit watching Netflix and reading a book every night? I don't know. But if we can make that book come to life on Netflix, that's going to change the world, because that's what people are going to consume. So for so long, media has been used to numb people, to switch people off. If we can use it to excite, elevate, enlighten people, not by like the cheesy way of like, oh, let's follow someone through their journey of enlightenment. It's not like that kind of stuff. I mean, like really entertaining programming where you can learn by being entertained at the same time. If I can do that by changing the most powerful industry in the world, then I will feel that I've had somewhat of an impact. Because that way I think we'll reach the world without having to get everyone to change their habits too much. My thing is, how do we meet people where they are and really deliver a message and a powerful expression of love? And to me, that's the highest form of compassion. The highest form of empathy, love, and compassion is to meet people where they already are, rather than expecting them to change. And yeah, that's the impact I'd like to have on the world. So fingers crossed. With your help, with the help of everyone who's watching, you know, it's going to be a team effort. I can't do it on my own. I'm not expecting to. But yeah, that's the impact I'd like to have on the world.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was incredible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Guys, I'm telling you, when you look at a tribe of people, everybody has different roles, and there's always somebody whose job it is to go out, to experience the world, to bring back the wisdom in a form that has been digested and made easy for other people to take away. Jay Shetty is that man. Go watch his content. It is somebody who has gone out into the world, who's been a monk, who's worked at Accenture and everywhere in between, and come back with a real ability to explain what is going on. And he does it from a position of not trying to seem smarter than you or better than you, but just that's his role. Some people are musicians, some people are the doctors, and some people break down the information. I really think he has unique access to the wisdom, as he calls it, to understand what people are trying to encapsulate in the books, modern or ancient, and his ability to articulate that in a way that feels like modern rap, spoken word, whatever you want to think of it as. It is in and of itself an artistic creation, so you cannot go wrong diving into it. It is not a mistake that he's had over 1 billion views in less than 12 months, which is insanity. So go check his stuff out. Hit him up, ask him questions, keep an eye, because I think he's going to be one of the greats at really digesting that information and really helping wisdom go viral. All right, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching and being a part of this community. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. You're going to get weekly videos on building a growth mindset, cultivating grit, and unlocking your full potential.
Hey everybody, welcome to Impact Theory. You're here because, like me, you believe that human potential is nearly limitless, but you know that having potential is not the same as actually doing something with it. So our goal with this show and company is to introduce you to the people and ideas that are going to help you actually execute on your dreams. All right, today's guest is one of the most popular on-air commentators and opinion writers for CNN, and her unique brand of raw and relatable advice has made her one of the most sought-after speakers and media personalities. And watching her, you get the feeling that this mother of three is just getting started. Her well-researched and really powerful insights into what it means to be a human come wrapped in both science and lovely, lovely Midwestern charm, allowing her to cut through the formality of typical business jargon and grab her audiences by the emotions. She's made a name for herself by being blunt, unapologetic, and yet totally vulnerable. She says what everybody is already thinking, but is just a little too scared to say, and it makes people absolutely love her. It is not hard to understand why her TED Talk titled How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over is one of the most watched TED Talks of all time, and it's also easy to see why she's an award-winning talk radio host who is trusted by some of the biggest brands on the planet to help motivate and advise their teams. She's appeared on everything from Good Morning America and The Today Show to Dr. Phil and Oprah, and somehow she's also made time to found an inspirational news site called Inspire52.com and found and sell a retail and internet tech company. So please, help me in welcoming the former criminal defense attorney who has been called an explosion of inspiration, the best-selling author with a brand new book titled The 5-Second Rule, the master of motivation herself, Mel Robbins. It's really good to have you on the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you. You know,
Absolutely.
you called me the master of motivation, and I think motivation is complete garbage, so maybe we should start there.
That is a perfect place to start. So I totally agree with you. But why do you say that? I do, 100%. Now, I said that in the spirit of, I know what you're trying to do, so it is meant with absolute reverence. But why do you say that it's garbage?
Well, and we'll talk a lot about this, but I think it's garbage because at some point we all bought into this lie that you gotta feel ready in order to change.
Yeah.
We bought into this complete falsehood that at some point you're gonna have the courage, at some point you're gonna have the confidence, and it's total bullshit, frankly. Are we allowed to swear on this show?
Absolutely.
Okay. It's complete garbage, and so there are so many people in the world, and you know, you may be watching this right now, and you have these incredible ideas, and what you think is missing is motivation. And that's not true. Because the way that our minds are wired, and the fact about human beings, is that we are not designed to do things that are uncomfortable, or scary, or difficult. Our brains are designed to protect us from those things, because our brains are trying to keep us alive. And in order to change, in order to build a business, in order to be the best parent, the best spouse, to do all those things that you know you want to do with your life, with your work, with your dreams, you're going to have to do things that are difficult, uncertain, or scary, which sets up this problem for all of us. You're never going to feel like it. Motivation's garbage. You only feel motivated to do the things that are easy, right?
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I know exactly why that is. Because I've studied this so much, because for me, one of the hardest things to figure out was, why is it so hard to do the little things that would improve my life? And what I've come to realize, and what we'll talk a lot about today, is that the way that our minds are designed is our minds are designed to stop you at all costs from doing anything that might hurt you. And the way that this all happens is it all starts with something super subtle that none of us ever catch. And that is with this habit that all of us have that nobody's talking about. We all have a habit of hesitating. We have an idea, you're sitting in a meeting, you have this incredible idea, and instead of just, you know, saying it, you stop and you hesitate. Now, what none of us realize is that when you hesitate, just that moment, that micro moment, that small hesitation, it sends a stress signal to your brain. It wakes your brain up, and your brain all of a sudden goes, oh, wait a minute, why is he hesitating? He didn't hesitate when he put on his killer spiky sneakers. He didn't hesitate with the really cool track pants. He didn't hesitate with the NASA t-shirt. Now he's hesitating to talk, something must be up. So then your brain goes to work to protect you. It has a million different ways to protect you. One of them is called the spotlight effect. It's a known phenomenon where your brain magnifies risk. Why? To pull you away from something that it perceives to be a problem. And so you can truly trace every single problem or complaint in your life to silence and hesitation. Those are decisions. And what I do and what's changed my life is waking up and realizing that motivation's garbage. I'm never going to feel like doing the things that are tough or difficult or uncertain or scary or new. So I need to stop waiting until I feel like it. And number two, I am one decision away from a totally different marriage, a totally different life, a totally different job, a totally different income, a totally different relationship with my kids. Not like one decision, I'm divorcing you in the marriage example, but one decision on, you know, you could be having a conversation with your spouse and you feel your emotions rise up, and within a tiny window, those emotions can take over and can impact how your marriage goes. Or